What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was forced into a marriage with all the Kunoichi? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. It was a peaceful day in Konoha village. The citizens going about their daily schedules, the Anbu keeping guard, and the academy students enjoying their break before they would return to the academy in a month to see which team they would be placed in. All in all, it was a rather normal day for Konoha. It was normal for all, except one citizen of Konoha. This citizen had gravity-defying hair, bright blue eyes, 3 strange whisker marks on each cheek, and answered to the name Naruto. Naruto currently found himself at a place he'd normally never be, the Konoha village library. The night before, he had found out that he was the holder of the legendary 9-tailed demon fox, Kyuubi. After waking up and eating a quick breakfast, he had rushed over to the library to find all the information he could about the demon. Unfortunately, there wasn't much information. Just the normal stuff taught at the academy. It was big, evil, and could level mountains. With a dejected sigh, Naruto began to leave the library. As he was leaving, he noticed a tall, imposing-looking man with 2 long scars on his face looking at a book. Naruto saw that he had a black Konoha forehead protector bandana on his head. Wow, he's strong, Naruto thought to himself. He could just feel the strength radiating off of this man. Soon the man had put the book back on the shelf and walked away. Naruto went to where the man had been and looked at the row of books he had put the book on. A few of the titles caught his attention: torture, physical or mental, mediation, discover the inner you, and breaking the mind, were the 3 that grabbed his attention the most. Naruto picked up the book he had seen the man holding: torture, physical or mental? The book was about different ways to torture people both physically and mentally, named the pros and cons of both types of torture, and even how to use the techniques in the book. He's got to be really strong to use this. I want to be stronger, so maybe I should try this, Naruto thought as he tucked the book under his arm. The next book Naruto took of the shelf was Mediation, Discover the Inner You. The book was about how to properly mediate, clearing your mind, and unlocking your mindscape. Naruto was about to put the book back when a thought struck him. If he wanted to know more about the Kyuubi, why not mediate and ask him? With that though in mind, Naruto tucked that book under his arm with the other one. The last book he took of the shelf was Breaking the Mind. This book was about shattering a person's mental state, and how to withstand mental torture. Naruto thought this would be a good addition as well, so he quickly checked out all 3 books and made his way outside. I'm going to lean this and become strong like Bandana-san. Then, I'll be 1 step closer to becoming Hokage. After several minutes of walking and a quick trip to Ichiraku ramen bar, to get some ramen of lunch later, Naruto arrived at a clearing in the forest to do some undisturbed reading. He began reading Mediation, Discovering the Inner You, because he was eager to speak with Kyuubi. After an hour of reading he had the basis of what the book was talking about down. Naruto then quickly ate an early lunch and then began to mediate. With some work, he was able to clear his mind. He sat on the forest floor for an unknown amount of time before he heard a drop of water splashing into more water. Opening his eyes, Naruto saw that he was no longer in the forest, but in a sewer-like hallway. I'm guessing this is supposed to be my mindscape? Naruto asked himself. What he hadn't expected was a reply. That is correct, mortal. Naruto looked around frantically, trying to find where the voice came from. Who said that? He asked in a slightly quivering voice. I think you know who, boy. Come, the voice replied. Naruto saw that at the far end of the hallway, there was a red glow and he began to make his way through the ankle-deep water to it. Soon he walked into the room and saw that it was massive in size. At the other end of the room, were giant bars of like a cage going from the floor to the ceiling. On what looked to be the door of the cage was a slip of paper with the word, seal, on it. Come closer, the voice said. Naruto carefully stepped forward, when suddenly out of the darkness came large, razor-sharp claws aiming at his head. Naruto jumped and scrambled back as fast as he could, as the voice laughed. That isn't funny, he yelled out at the cage. It was to me, came the reply as 2 very large, slightly glowing, red eyes appeared. Kyuubi, Naruto spoke in a hushed whisper. Yes, it is me. Now, what does my jailer want? It doesn't take a demon of my age to know you've come here for something. Kyuubi said. Naruto looked at the eyes and said, "Yeah, if you're going to be in me, I want your chakra. It's time you start paying rent." "No," was the response he got from the demon. "Hey, if I die, you go with me." Naruto cried out. "So? If you die, I go to hell. There, I just have to rip open a portal back to this plane. Death doesn't concern me. You were wanting to use some of my power to help you, weren't you?" Naruto nodded at the question as Kyuubi continued speaking. "You aren't strong enough to use my power. However, I could make you stronger. But, there's a price." Naruto looked questioningly at the eyes. "What's the price?" he asked. "As far as demons are concerned, you now represent me. With you being weak, it means I'm weak. With you being an idiot, I'm seen as being stupid. So, I'll help you get stronger if you stop being an idiot." Kyuubi told him. Naruto stared, wide-eyed. "How am I, an idiot?" he asked the demon. "Well, the first and biggest reason for how you're an idiot is the pursuit of that pink-haired menace. What's wrong with Sakura-chan? She's the greatest." Naruto cried out angrily at Kyuubi's eyes. "Does this look great to you, mortal?" On the side of the room, images began to flash. All of them, showing how Sakura treated Naruto. Sadly, none of them showed her as being the kind of girl Naruto had built her up to be in his mind. His fascination with her began to crumble with each passing image. Soon, even he had no choice but to admit the fox was right. As he looked back up, into the demon's eyes, his pursuit of Sakura died. Although, a part of him hoped they could still one day be friends. "You said that was first. What are the other reasons?" Naruto asked, wanting to know more. "The second reason is how you went about getting attention. That's not the kind you want. You want to get attention for being a strong ninja, so no more pranks. Or rather, not as many as before. Third, your clothes scream, 'Here I am. Kill me,' to the enemy. Ninjas aren't supposed to be seen. Since you have a hard time buying things in the village, use Henge to buy what you need. Finally, you may not have noticed last night, but whatever your cage bunchins learn is transferred back to you when they expire. If you summon a group of them and have each of them read a different book, when they expire the knowledge of what each of them read is then transferred to you. Now, only knowledge is transferred. If you summon a group of them and have them each practice punching a log, when they expire it will feel like you did all of that. You will be able to punch more accurately, but your punches won't be any stronger. So you will have to build up your muscle yourself." Throughout Kyuubi's talking, Naruto could see the fox's point to each of them. Granted though, he did like orange. "Now, I agreed to help you get stronger and I will, but you must do something for me." "What would you have me do?" Naruto asked, curious as to what the fox could want from him. "That night I attacked all those years ago wasn't an accident. Someone was pulling my strings. No one uses me. I want you to find them and kill them. All I know is that it involves a man in an orange mask and another that smells like snakes. I'm sure there are more though." Naruto stared slightly wide-eyed at the fox's eyes. "And how do I go about finding these men?" he asked. "I believe that they will find you. I've had a hunch that their plan all along was for me to be sealed in someone. So, sooner or later they'll come for you. Until then, you need to get stronger. I'm going to teach you a technique to help you. It is Cage Butai. This technique will make a perfect copy of any object until you dispel it. Use it on the books you have with your clones to learn faster. These are the hand seals for it." Kyuubi told him as up on the wall images for the hand seals appeared. "Use what you have learned for No to become stronger." Kyuubi told him once he had memorized the hand seals. Just before forcing himself out of his mindscape, Naruto asked a growing question: "Why are you doing this?" "Simple, I don't want to be seen as weak and I want those who tried to use me to pay dearly for trying to use me," was the reply he got from the fox as he left his mind. As Naruto opened his eyes, he could see that a bit of time had passed while he was in his mind. When he had entered it was just after 12 o'clock. But now, it looked to be around 3 by the sun. "I guess I should get to work," Naruto thought to himself as he summoned 2 clones. To one clone, he gave torture, physical or mental. To read, and to the other clone, he gave breaking the mind to read. While he took mediation, discovering the inner you, and began to practice making copies of it. Several hours later, as the sun was setting, Naruto had mastered the Cage Butai and was able to make 100 perfect copies of mediation, discovering the inner. He then dispelled the books followed by the clones. Naruto jerked slightly as the knowledge of what the clones learned was transferred to him. Wow! I'm going to need to get a lot more books to do that stuff effectively. He told himself as he headed to Ichiraku Ramen Bar for supper. The following day Naruto went out and bought a dictionary. Afterwards, he checked out several more books from the library. He got books on low-level jutsus, manners, how to do-it-yourself repairs, styling, torture, interrogation, chakra usage, and counterintelligence. He then brought all of the books he had with him to the field he had been at the day before. Naruto used Kage Butai and made 15 copies of each book. This gave him 180 books. Naruto then summoned 200 clones and had 180 of them start reading. He had 10 practice throwing, 5 practice kicking, and 5 practice punching. While the clones did as they were ordered, Naruto began to work on building his muscles. He then spent the entire day training until the sun was setting. The backlash of the knowledge he was absorbing from his clones caused him to lose his balance for a moment. He did this same routine all week long, with the addition of 40 clones to practice what he had learned. 20 of them would practice jutsus and the other 20 would practice torture and interrogation. Every day he improved by leaps and bounds, until finally it was time to take his first real step to becoming stronger. He used henge and bought himself some new clothes to make him look intimidating. Naruto went to his apartment and put his new clothes on. He then left and made his way to the Hokage's office. As he walked down the street, he saw that he was receiving the usual cold looks, but some were giving looks of interests. Everyone gave him a wide berth as he walked down the street. Sarutobi, the third Hokage of Konoha, was sitting at his desk going over paperwork and wishing that something would come along to give him a break from the paperwork. "Hey old man, we need to talk," came the voice of Naruto. Sarutobi thanked the gods for Naruto. He'd give him a few hours off from the paperwork. When Sarutobi looked up, he wasn't prepared for what he saw. Standing before him was Naruto in completely different clothing than from what he had last seen the boy wearing. Naruto had black combat boots, slightly baggy black pants, a black leather belt with a steel skull buckle, and a well-fitting black shirt. He also had a black trench coat that had silver buckles, a high collar that covered the lower half of his face, and at the base of the coat were orange flames. Taking in the boy's new look, he asked, "What would you like to talk about, Naruto?" Naruto sat in one of the chairs in front of the Hokage and began to speak. "You know it's my dream to be Hokage, right?" At this Sarutobi nodded. "Well, I can't become Hokage if I don't become stronger. Not just physically or mentally, but being able to handle doing certain things. I want to become the first ever genin interrogation and torture specialist of Konoha." Upon hearing the boy's request, Sarutobi's pipe fell out of his mouth. "Naruto, I don't think." Naruto quickly cut him off. "I know what the job entails. I've been studying and practicing. I wouldn't be asking you for this if I wasn't sure I could do it. I simply can't make you an interrogator because you ask for it." The Hokage explained. "Then let me prove it. I can interrogate someone, and if I do well, you can let me join. You got Mizuki, so surely I could interrogate him." Sarutobi looked at the boy. "You're going to be leading a much harder life if you choose this. It will make me stronger." Naruto replied. "Well, let's head to the Anbu headquarters. The interrogation head is there. If you do well, you'll be trained by him," Sarutobi said as he stood up from his desk. The two of them walked to the Anbu headquarters and were soon going inside. Once inside, Sarutobi turned to a passing Anbu and ordered him to get the interrogation head. Soon, the Anbu returned, bringing a man with him. Naruto's eyes widened slightly as he saw that it was the man from the library. "Naruto, meet Ibiki Morino, head of Anbu interrogations," Sarutobi said. Naruto smiled and shook the man's hand. "Hey, you're that guy from the library, Bandana-san," Naruto said. At this everyone's sweat dropped. It seemed that Naruto hadn't thrown away his disrespect for authority. Sarutobi took Ibiki to the side and explained what was happening. Ibiki looked at the Hokage surprised. He then looked back at Naruto and then back at the Hokage. After a few more minutes of talking, the two men came back over. Ibiki looked at Naruto and spoke gruffly, "Look brat, I don't know what gave you idea that you could do this, but since the Hokage is asking, I'll go along with this. If you can get that piece of shit to crack, and it had better be a good show, I'll take you as my apprentice. However, if you fail, you'll fuck any chance of ever getting into the Anbu. Also, the entire Anbu will be watching from a closed circuit. Do I make myself understood?" Naruto nodded his head. Alright, then you can conduct the interrogation any way you see fit. You'll be doing it alone, but we'll be watching. You can do anything you need to do to get him to talk, except killing him. Ibiki explained. Naruto pulled a small stack of papers from his inner coat pocket and handed them to Ibiki. Please prepare the room as I have stated and bring the items I have requested. Also, may I have an hour to go over the case files? He asked. Ibiki didn't show it, but he was surprised at the boy's request. He looked through the papers and was impressed with what he saw. He looked back at Naruto for confirmation, who nodded. Ibiki arched his eyebrow, wondering just what the greenhorn genin was planning, as he walked off. Meanwhile, word had spread through the Anbu headquarters that a genin was going to be evaluated by Ibiki to see if he could be an interrogation specialist. Soon bets were flying back and forth on whether or not the kid could do it. After 10 minutes, Ibiki came back and handed Naruto Mizuki's case files. We're putting the room together as you asked. You better put on one hell of a show, Brad. I'm wasting a lot of manpower on this. The questions we want answered are inside the folder. Get him to answer 4 of them or the last question and you're in. Don't worry, Bandana-san, you'll get a great show. You should get some popcorn and a soda for it. Now, if you don't mind, I'll need to get well versed with the details of the case. Naruto said confidently. The Anbu nearby just stared. Think he'll do it? One of them, with a bear mask, asked. No way, the kid's dreaming. His hawk-masked partner replied. Care to make a bet then? The bear Anbu asked. Okay, 10,000 Ryu says he fails. The hawk Anub replied. With that, the bets were on. Each one having more money and being crazier than the last one. Sarutobi frowned at the open gambling, but even he placed a bet on Naruto. After 45 minutes, 30 minutes of reading the file with 10 clones and 15 minutes of sorting 5.5 hours worth of reading, Naruto got up and said to Ibiki, I'm ready. The man nodded his head, escorted him to the chamber. Naruto saw that over 75 Anbu were watching from the closed circuit. I'll need 10 minutes to set everything up. Bring him in after that, Naruto said, as he was buzzed into the room. Once he was in the room, Naruto summoned his clones and went about fixing the room up, giving it some last-minute touches. If they wanted a show, he was going to give them one and make them shit themselves. After a few moments, Naruto called over the intercom, you can bring him in now. Also, I would like to have an Anbu in here to start off the show. Ibiki signaled for 2 Anbu to get Mizuki, while a purple-haired, female, Neko-masked Anbu went inside the room. Once inside, she saw that the usual interrogation room had been turned into a cross between a surgery room and a torture room. The wear chains hanging from the ceiling, different body parts preserved in jars around the room, including one with an almost beating heart. There was a creepy-looking operating table, a fire-roaring furnace, the usual metal table and interrogation chair, and an overall feeling of death and decay in the air. Well, she for one was creeped out. Removing the cover from the one-way window was Naruto. He had changed outfits. He was now wearing a sadistic-looking white scrub uniform and a white lab coat. As he turned to face her, she saw what looked and smelled like blood on the front of his shirt and pants. Well, what do you think? He asked her. Neko nodded her head in approval. Meanwhile, people were looking at the closed-circuit television and into the room in both shock and awe. What is Kami's name is that kid planning? One of the Anbu asked. I don't know, but I like his style. I think I will go get some popcorn, replied the snake mistress Anko as she got up to get some. Back in the room, Naruto turned to Neko and said, tell me when they're almost here. He then put on a pair of latex gloves and a surgical mask. They're a few steps away, Naruto-san, Neko told him, feeling her comrade's chakras. Naruto nodded and made a quick clone. The clone then hanged into random-looking male thug. It got on the operating table and Naruto tied its limbs to the shackles. About this time, just as Naruto was cutting open the chest, the 2 Anbu walked in with Mizuki between them. No, no, please God no, the clone yelled out, seeming to die, as Naruto peeled away the skin. He then took an instrument off of the table next to him and spread the ribs open. All of this was seen by the Anbu in the next room. Damn, that is fucked up. One of the Anbu spoke up at what was happening. Back in the room, Naruto had removed the heart and put it in an iced medical cooler, making sure everyone saw it, but not his face. He then undid the shackles and picked up the body, carrying it to the furnace. Naruto lowered the furnace wall and threw the body in. He quickly shut the wall, so no one would see the clone dispel. He removed the bloody gloves and mask. He grabbed the cooler and wrote, "Urgent," on the outside with a black marker. Finally, he turned around to face them for the first time. The three Anbu felt a slight shiver go down their spines, as Mizuki nearly outright pissed himself. Naruto was staring at them with cold, hard eyes. His gaze was so intense, he could have frozen water. Naruto walked over to Neiko and handed her the collar with the heart. "See that he gets this. It will give him something to remember his brother by." Naruto spoke in a cold-hearted voice. Naruto then turned to Mizuki and the guards. "Ah, I see that my 10 o'clock is here. If you please, gentlemen," he said, gesturing to the table and chair. The Anbu took Mizuki over to the chair and latched him onto the shackles. The three Anbu then left the room. Mizuki stared at him. "What the fuck are you doing here, demon?" he asked angrily. Naruto paid him no mind and went over to a table by the wall and picked up a clipboard. "Answer me, you piece of shit. What are you doing here?" Mizuki yelled out, nearly foaming. "I think it would be obvious what I'm doing here, Mizuki. You're going to be my guest for a while." Naruto replied coolly. "Huh?" was the only intelligible reply he got from the former Leaf Nen. Naruto sighed and said, "Long story short, I'm going to be the first ever genin interrogation specialist of Konoha, and you are my first. I've heard the adults call it a different name, popping the cherry, I believe? I overheard some women talking about it at the grocery store. I know, it's used when trying something new. They also said, the first time isn't good. So, we'll have to practice a lot. Won't we?" Inside the closed circuit room, the Anbu, Ibiki, and the Hokage watched in stunned silence. Suddenly, the Anbu began to laugh. "Man, that is some fucked up shit." One of them cried out between laughs. "Damn, that is funny." Another one added, "This brat is going to be fun to play with." Anko added. Ibiki had a sadistic grin himself, at the kid's style. Sarutobi looked appalled, but had to admit it was effective. Back in the room, Mizuki stared wide-eyed at Naruto, taking in what the brat had told him. Mizuki scoffed in disbelief. "They wouldn't let a failure like you do such things. And, what the hell is up with that outfit?" he asked. "Oh, you mean this? Well, before I wanted to be Hokage, I wanted to be a doctor. I find the human body so interesting. Sadly, sometimes the body will start to break down, and at that point you need to remove it." Naruto replied as he picked up a jar with a severed head. "As for letting me do this, it's perfect for a failure like me. Fuck off, brat, I'm not buying your ad." Mizuki screamed back. "Mizuki, you taught me at the academy for 7 years. You know what kind of failure I am, right?" Naruto asked. Everyone looked confused. "When I fail to get something right, I go at it again and again. Until finally, I get it right. Now, I don't expect to get this first one right, so we'll keep doing it over and over until it's done right. The only orders I was given was to make you talk and not kill you, so we could be here for days. There's a lot of things I want to try." Naruto replied as he pulled out a book and opened it. Naruto then continued saying, "I doubt I'll get them right the first time, so doing them over and over is more than likely going to hurt like a bitch. Now, here's the first question. Who were you taking the forbidden scroll to?" "Fuck off, you piece of shit." Mizuki screamed back, though not as strong as before. "Well, Mizuki, looks like I have to torture you. I'm going to get myself a cup of coffee while I think on what to give you." Naruto told the man while he undid the man's shackles. "How the fuck did he get a key to the shackles?" one of the Anbu asked. The first rule of interrogating was to never give the key to the interrogators. "Well, Ibiki, you said you wanted a show and I think you're about to get it," remarked the third, as everyone watched Naruto walk over to the door. "You're leaving me by myself?" Mizuki asked, wondering just how stupid the brat was. "Oh, I would never do that. I'm leaving you in the hands of the nurse," Naruto replied as he stepped out of the door. "Nurse?" everyone asked as one. "Well, this is going to be good," Ibiki said. Everyone turned to stare at him. "That door can only be opened from the outside and no one pressed the button for it," Ibiki told them as he pointed to the button for the door. Everyone looked into the room waiting to see what was going to happen. Mizuki was looking around him wondering who the idiot could have been talking about. Suddenly, the lights went out, bathing him in a thick darkness. "Hey, what the hell's going on?" Anko yelled out. No one could see anything on the monitors or through the window. Hello? Muziki called out in the darkness with a stutter. Without warning, something smashed into the side of his face and sent him flying. Everyone jumped in surprise as something smashed into the window. The window was steel reinforced, one-way, mirror window. So, whatever hit the window had to have hit it hard to make those crack lines. Everyone watched as a piece broke off, very hard indeed. The lights flickered for a moment before finally coming on all the way. The Anbu stared in awe at the sight. Smashed up against the window was Muziki. His face was bloody from cuts, his nose was broken, and he seemed to be choking. Suddenly, he was flipped over against the window. Everyone heard him gasp at what he saw. Slowly, his body was lowered, giving everyone a view of who was in the room with him. They saw that it wasn't Naruto, but a woman. She was a tall, busty, red-headed woman with ivory-white skin. She wore a figure showing black nurse's uniform, thigh-high black stockings, and 6-inch high heels. The most noticeable features about this woman was the black eye patch with the medical plus symbol over her left eye, her sharp feral-looking teeth, and how her only remaining eye was silted and glowing red eye. "Who the fuck are you?" they heard Muziki ask. For the first time the woman took her eye off of Muziki and looked at the window, looked at them. She then lowered her eye back to Muziki. "I am Kyuubi, mortal," she replied with a growl. At this, everyone took great notice of the 9 large swishing tails behind her. And Muziki screamed. On the other side of Konoha, 2 look-alike figures were practicing kicking at some logs. "Guy-sensei, what is that most unyouthful noise?" the smaller one asked the taller one. "I'm not sure, Lee. Whatever it is, we should avoid it. It sounds like it would take away out youthfulness," Guy replied to his student. Back in the closed circuit room, people were freaking out at what the kid was doing. One of the Anbu had fainted and Anko was laughing like a woman possessed. Ibiki had shit-eating grin on his face. He liked the kid's style. Sarutobi had an eyebrow arched in surprise. Naruto said he'd give them a show and this was turning out to be one hell of a performance. "Holy shit, Muziki just pissed himself," one of the Anbu noticed. At this a few people groaned, having lost the bet on if he would piss himself. Back in the room, Muziki stared at the woman in front of him, terrified. As fast as lightning, she grabbed him by the throat and threw him over her head, slamming him down on the operating table. Before he could register what happened, his limbs were bound to the shackles. He looked at the woman and saw that she had pulled out a book from somewhere. He looked at the cover and took great notice of the cover, 100 Ways to Cook Humans. At this Muziki began to feel squeamish. "First, make sure meat is properly prepared before you cook it," she said while reading. Muziki felt his blood run cold. "Meat should be tenderized." The woman spoke next and then looked at him. She grabbed the top of his shirt and ripped it off. Looking at his chest she said, "Well, you aren't well muscled, so how much tenderizing could you need? Even that Akari guy is more muscled. But then again, anyone who stares at the snake woman's ass as much as he does better be." Inside the closed circuit room, a few of the Anbu risked a look at Anko while everyone had the same thought. Akari? The academy teacher? Anko herself was giggling in excitement. She was going to have some fun next time she saw Akari. As Anko giggled, the ANBUs closest to her inched away. Back in the torture room, Kyuubi continued her cooking. "Next, you need to properly season the meat." She began to pour bottles of steak sauce, hot sauce, salt, pepper, steak seasoning, and garlic powder all over the man's body. "Then, add greens to go with your meat," she read aloud. Kyuubi then lifted up a bag and began to remove different vegetables from it, cutting them up and spreading them around Muziki's body. She finished by stuffing an apple in his mouth. She then turned back to the book and continued to read. "With your meat prepared you can begin to cook," she read aloud from the book. For the bag she took out a packet of matches and lit one. She then turned to face Muziki and gave him a sadistic grin, causing him to whimper. Kyuubi flicked the lit match at him, where it then proceeded to land on his crotch and began to set him ablaze. All of the men watching crossed their legs at this. They all stared in shock at what the kid was doing. He really must have wanted Ibiki's approval. A few of the Anbu glanced at the head of Anbu interrogations and saw that he had his hand up to his chin and was stroking his chin thoughtfully. Ibiki himself was impressed. The brat had style, was taking torture to a whole new level, and was being funny about it. If he could get that sack of shit to confess who he was stealing the scroll for, the boy was in. Anko was busy planning on how to get Akari out on a date. Luckily, she always did her best thinking when someone was screaming. She'd have to thank the kid later. Back in the room, Kyubi saw that the weakling was screaming something over and over again. She lifted up a bucket of salt water and poured it over his burning crotch. Once the fire was out, she yanked the apple out of his mouth and leaned closer. "Yes?" she asked him. "I'll talk. I was stealing it for Orochimaru-sama." Muziki sobbed out in pain. With a poof, the woman disappeared and in her place was Naruto. "Now was that so hard, Muziki?" he asked the burnt man. Naruto leaned in close and grabbed Muziki by his hair, forcing the man to look at him. "Now, if I found out you're lying to me, I'll send you to the real Kyubi and you do not want to meet her," he said in a cold voice. The Anbu in the closed-circuit room were staring at the kid. "He actually did it," one of them said. A moment later several people groaned at the money they had lost and the things they would have to do. Yes, it was going to be an odd day tomorrow when some of the Anbu go out patrolling tomorrow in pink tutus. Sarutobi looked at Naruto with pride in his eyes. It may not be an easy path, but Naruto could handle it. Back in the room Muziki was confessing to everything. How he planned to gain entrance to Orochimaru's village, killing a former teammate, and dozens of other things, including stealing panties at the local washateria. Ibiki nodded his head in approval as Naruto walked out of the room slightly shaken. Naruto was taken aback by the cheering and whistling for the audience of Anbu. Naruto proceeded to look at them for a moment before puking. As two Anbu carried an unconscious Muziki out, Ibiki stepped up to him and said, "Not bad brat, you passed. The first time is always the worst. I'm going to train you just like I said I would. When you aren't with your team, doing missions, training, eating, or sleeping you'll be learning from me. You are now the first ever Anbu apprentice straight out of the academy. Welcome to the Anbu, kid." Ibiki grinned at the end. The Anbu watching clapped as Naruto raised his head and replied, "Thanks," he said, to the taller man. Sarutobi then stepped forward and asked, "Naruto, where did you learn to do this?" "Oh, well, nearly a week ago I saw Ibiki-san at the library and thought he looked strong. I wanted to get stronger, so I looked at some of the books he was looking at and practiced with them. I picked up the books, torture, physical or mental, mediation, discover the inner you, and breaking the mind. Afterwards, I went out to a field and began to mediate, as I wanted to meet Kyubi after learning that she's sealed inside of me. Once I met Kyubi, she told me I was too weak and stupid. So a challenge was brought forth. The stronger I get, the more power she'll let me use. She taught me how my clones transfer the knowledge they leaned back to me and how to make perfect copies of objects. The following day I got some more books and made copies of them and clones to read them," Naruto explained to the Hokage. Ibiki arched an eyebrow in surprise. He knew the book the kid was talking about and it was a high-level book. No need to tell him though, he didn't want the kid to get a big head over it. Nodding his head at Naruto's explanation, he looked at Naruto and asked, "What did you mean, when you said you'd send Muziki to meet the real Kyubi?" "Just that," replied Naruto. "Kyubi has been teaching me a lost jutsu. The jutsu takes the soul of another and puts it into the caster's body. The person that gains the life force and knowledge of that person. Normally, there would be a fight for dominance. However, due to the seal, they would be stuck with Kyubi as a roommate while I got their knowledge. I would also have their life force, unless Kyubi got bored and ate them," Naruto explained to him. Upon hearing this, most of the Anbu stepped back, as none of them wanted to meet Kyubi. "What did the demon say, Naruto?" Sarutobi asked, slightly shaken at what Naruto had said. "Kyubi wants me to find and kill those who forced her to be sealed. She said one of them smelled like snakes and the other had an orange mask," Naruto told him. The Hokage nodded his head thinking about what Naruto had said. "Well, go HME and get some rest, kid. I'll see you day after tomorrow," Ibiki said, walking up to Naruto, right before he puked again. "Oh gods, do I feel sick," Naruto mumbled out. "Don't worry about it, brat. It means that you're human. I want you to come in tomorrow to get your Anbu tattoo, signifying that you are an Anbu apprentice. Get here early and Anko will get it taken care of," Ibiki said as Naruto nodded and walked out, heading back to his apartment to rest. Even though it was only noon. Once Naruto was gone, Sarutobi turned to Ibiki and asked, "What is your opinion of he boy?" He has great potential. Maybe one day, he could become Hokage. However, we need to act quickly. If the council gets wind of this, they may try to stop him from being my apprentice." Ibiki replied to the weathered leader. "Don't worry. By nightfall, Naruto will be your apprentice and the council won't be able to do anything about it. Take care of him, Ibiki. He is like a grandson to me," the third replied as he left. Meanwhile, deep in the recesses of a dark sphere, two glowing red eyes opened. "So, the brat is getting strong. This is going to be fun to watch." The nine-tailed fox demon, Kyubi thought to herself with an amused laugh. Mortals were such fun and tasty too. The next morning, Naruto made his way to the Anbu headquarters. Once inside, he was surprised at how people greeted him. Several of the ANBUs had their masks off and smiled at him. A few even waved. As he watched the people go about, Anko came over to him with a sleepy look in her eyes. "What happened to you?" Naruto asked her. "Oh, shut up. I had a late night, last night," Anko replied. "Now listen here, worm. You are an Anbu apprentice. When doing Anbu work you outrank Chunin and are on the same level as a Tokubetsu Junin. Until your training is over. Your training will be done in a year or when you make the rank of Chunin. Once your training is over you will join as a main interrogator. We can't have your identity known just yet. So, for a while, you will be wearing a mask. Afterwards, you'll be known to the world. You'll have a room here at HQ for whenever you need it. After 6 months, you'll be allowed access to the Anbu library. You now have access to the training grounds. Understand?" She looked to see him nod. "Why are they all staring at me?" Naruto asked, commenting on all of the stares he was getting. "You're now the youngest student of Ibiki. The most feared interrogator in the 5 great nations." Anko replied, as they entered the records room. There a member came in and took a picture of him, creating his record. He was then given a standard Anbu weapons kit, a key to his room, and access codes to the training grounds. Next, he was brought to the Anbu tattoo artist and given his Anbu apprentice tattoo on his right shoulder. As he let the pain subside, Ibiki came in. "Come with me," the older man told him. Naruto followed his teacher to his office. Once there, Ibiki sat behind his desk and Naruto in front of him. "You're talented kid, but I'm going to refine your techniques. We, as interrogators, are prime targets. And you become a bigger one being my apprentice, who you are, and what you want to do. However, you shouldn't slack off on your training. Now, we can't have you getting too strong just yet. But we'll help level you off with the other genin and give you some pointers. You will need to learn the human anatomy, psychology, medicine, and poisons. You'll be with me to watch and learn how a real interrogation works. Once your training is almost done, I'll let you try some. The best way is like you told Muiziki, through failure after failure." Ibiki told him. Naruto took what his sensei told him to heart. "Now, for the matter of your identity, we've come up with this," Ibiki said as he reached into his desk and pulled out a featureless black mask. The only noticeable mark on the mask was an orange-colored rip going from the top left of the mask, between where the eyes would be, and ending at the right cheek. "You are to wear this when you are here. When you put this on you are no longer Naruto Uzumaki, but the doctor," Ibiki told him, as he tossed the mask to him. Naruto stared at the mask in his hands. He had to admit, he liked the orange rip. "The mask will automatically stay on your face," Ibiki told him when he saw Naruto was looking to see how to put the mask on. "Now don't let all of this get to you, because you're training with Anko this morning," Ibiki told his student with a pleasant grin. Naruto stared at his sensei for a moment before he fainted. The weeks later. Over the last 3 weeks Naruto improved in leaps and bounds. Thanks to the training from Ibiki, Anko, Kunoichi Yamanaka and tips from other Anbu members, Naruto had a better understanding of what he had missed in the academy, even history. Although, he still didn't like it. Soon enough the 3 weeks were over and it was time to go to the academy and find out which genin team he would be on. Well, here goes nothing, Naruto thought to himself as he stepped out of his apartment and headed towards the academy. Very soon, things were going to change. It was noisy in the old academy classroom as Naruto walked in. For 2 years he had been attending classes in this room and during that time nothing really changed. The paint on the walls was boring, no one really listened in history, and all the girls swooned over Sasuke. Not wanting to draw unwanted attention to himself, just yet, Naruto grabbed a seat in the back. Just as he was getting comfortable, the ground began to shake. Well, at least I know who is coming, Naruto thought, as the door busted wide open by two girls trying to get into the classroom before the other. One girl had long pink hair, was wearing a red outfit, and was named Sakura Haruno. The other girl had long platinum blonde hair, was wearing a purple outfit, and was named Ino Yamanaka. After a moment of struggling, both of the girls fell forward onto the floor. I won, Ino Pig. Admit it, Sakura said as she stood up in triumph. I don't think so, Billboard Brow. I was here first, Ino shot back as she glared at Sakura. The two girls began arguing over who arrived first, until they saw that a free seat was open next to their crush Sasuke Uchiha. Unfortunately, every girl in the class took notice of this and all of them began arguing over who should get the seat. In the end, Sakura claimed the seat much to the disappointment of the other girls. When the chair next to him began to make noise from someone moving it, Naruto looked up to see Shikamaru Nara sitting down next to him. I'm surprised to see you here, Naruto. You do know this is only for those who passed, right? Shikamaru asked in his slow drawl. Naruto smirked at him and replied, I thought you were a genius, Shikamaru. Or were you just too lazy to see that I've got a forehead protector on? So, you do. Glad to see you passed. What's with the new clothes though? Shikamaru asked, taking note that Naruto was no longer wearing his trademarked orange jumpsuit. Instead, he was wearing black pants with an orange stripe going down each side and a black shirt with the village symbol in orange on both of the sleeves. I decided that since I was a genin, I should grow up some. As you can see though, I still like orange, Naruto replied. Iruka soon walked into the classroom and tried to get the students to calm down. However, everyone was too excited to notice him or pay attention. Using his big head no jutsu, Akari yelled at the class screaming, "Shut the hell up, you brats." This caused everyone to instantly stop talking and face forward in their seats. Seeing that the class was now paying attention, Iruka began calling out the squads. While Iruka was naming the teams, Naruto leaned over to Shikamaru and whispered, "Hey, do you and Choji want to join me for some ramen at Ichiraku's for lunch?" My treat. This caused Shikamaru to mentally arch an eyebrow in surprise, as Naruto never treated anyone to ramen. Ah, free food is free food. Besides, it's too troublesome to debate it. Shikamaru thought to himself before replying, "Sure. I'll tell Choji after W break for lunch." Iruka had just finished naming the members of Team 6 and was now calling a new team. The members of Team 7 are Haruno, Sakura, Uchiha, Sasuke, and Uzumaki, Naruto. Naruto raised his eyebrows slightly. Well, I wasn't expecting that. He thought to himself, they better not slow me down. Sasuke thought as he continued to stare out the window. Sakura, however, was reacting much different to the news than the boys were. What, I'm stuck with the dead last? She cried out in despair. Naruto just rolled his eyes at her overdramatizing of the situation. After all, he wasn't overly happy to be on a team with a fangirl. Iruka soon finished calling out the teams and dismissed them for lunch, telling them to be back at noon to meet their sensei. After grabbing Choji, the three friends began to make their way to Ichiraku Ramen Bar. In the courtyard of the academy was a group of girls talking amongst themselves. One of the girls glanced over to see the guys walking towards them, talking with each other. Hey, isn't that Naruto? She asked aloud, catching the attention of the other girls. They all looked in the direction she was pointing to see that it was the hyper ninja himself. Oh great, he'll probably rush over here and start gushing about how excited he is to be on the same team as me and ask if I'll join him for lunch. Groaned Sakura, as they watched the guys get closer. The girls waited to see what would happen as they got closer. Soon the guys were level with them and still nothing had happened. Then, they were past the group of girls and not even a glance in their direction. Finally, the guys were past the academy gates and on down the street. Wow, you just got burned, Billboard Brow, and by Naruto of all people. Chirped Ino in glee. Oh, shut up, Ino Pig. Sakura replied angrily. An hour later, Naruto was walking back into the classroom to meet his sensei. Soon Junins began arriving to pick up the newly formed squads. 30 minutes later, the only ones left were Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto. After another hour and a half of waiting, Naruto got fed up and went to the chalkboard. Grabbing the most chalk-filled eraser he could find, Naruto took it over to the door and wedged it between the door and the doorframe. Naruto, what do you think you're doing? Sakura asked. It's what our sensei gets for being so late. Naruto replied as he made his way back to his seat. A few moments later, the door opened and the sound of an eraser was heard hitting a head. The three genins looked over at the door to see a silver-haired man with his forehead protector over his left eye, and a face mask covering the lower half of his face. Team 7? He asked them. The three genins nodded. I'm Kakashi Hitaki, your sensei. Now, how can I put this? My first impression is, I don't like you guys. He said. This caused the three to feel slightly depressed. Now, let's go to the roof. He continued and then disappeared in a puff of smoke. The three teammates looked at each other and then got up, making their way to the roof. Once there, they saw that their sensei was already waiting for them. Let's start with some introductions. Kakashi said as the genins sat down on the steps. What would you like to know? Asked Sakura. Things like your name, likes, dislikes, dreams for the future, and hobbies. That sort of stuff. Kakashi replied, shrugging his shoulders. Why don't you go first, sensei? We don't know anything about you. Said Sakura. Okay, well, my name is Kakashi. I have no desire to tell you guys my likes or dislikes. I keep my dreams to myself and I have a lot of hobbies. He told them. We didn't learn anything other than his name. The genins of Team 7 thought as one. Start us off, Pinky. Kakashi said, looking at Sakura. My name is Sakura Haruno. The thing I like is. Well, the person I like is. Should I say dream for the future? Sakura said while blushing and glancing at Sasuke. Great. A fangirl. Kakashi thought. The thing I dislike is Naruto. Sakura continued in a deadpanned voice, before blushing again and saying, my hobbies are. Once again looking at Sasuke. You're up next, emo kid. Kakashi said, looking at Sasuke. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. There are tons of things I dislike and little I like. I don't have a dream, but rather an ambition. The resurrection of my clan and to kill a certain man. Sasuke said. I thought so. Kakashi thought to himself. And now we move on to you, Blondie. Kakashi said, looking at the last member of Team 7, Naruto. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like plenty of things and dislike a few things. My dream is to be the strongest Hokage. My hobby is training. Naruto informed with a smile. Interesting. Kakashi thought on the final member. Well, we start our duties tomorrow. First, we're going to do something with just the four of us. Kakashi informed them. What will we be doing, sensei? Asked Sakura. Survival training. Why is our duty training? Asked Sasuke. I thought we did enough training at the academy. Said Sakura. I'm your opponent, but this isn't normal training. Kakashi said mysteriously. Then, what is it? Naruto asked, arching his eyebrows in confusion. At this, Kakashi began to laugh slightly. What's so funny, sensei? Sakura asked, slightly annoyed. Well, it's just that when I tell you this you guys are going to flip. Kakashi said with a light chuckle, before become serious. Of the 27 graduates, only 9 will be chosen as genin. The rest will be sent back to the academy. This training is a difficult exam with a failure rate of over 66%. All 3 of them stared at him in shock. See, I told you you'd flip out. Kakashi said with a chuckle once again. Then what was the point of graduating? Asked Naruto. Oh, that's to see who has the chance of being chosen to be a genin. Kakashi told him. Anyway, tomorrow you will be graded on the training field. Bring all of your shinobi tools. Also, skip breakfast, you'll throw up. Kakashi told the team. I can't fail here. What would Ibiki and everyone else say? Naruto thought to himself. The details are in this printout. We'll be meeting at 8 in the morning. Don't be late, Kakashi said, handing them each a piece of paper. Then, disappearing in a puff of smoke. I guess we're getting the bell test tomorrow, then. Naruto said with a sigh as he stood up. What are you talking about, Dobi? Sasuke asked as he crumbled the piece of paper into a ball. I overheard a couple of Junins talking about that guy. He's the legendary Kakashi, master of 1000 jutsus. He's also legendary because he's never passed a genin team. He uses the same test that was used by the 4th, Jiraiya, the 3rd, and the 2nd. He'll show the genin 2 bells and tell them that they need to catch them in order to pass. Someone will then ask, why are there only 2 bells then? He'll then tell them that the one that doesn't catch a bell will be sent back to the academy. That statement causes the genins to start fighting against each other to not be sent back. However, if you were to look at the records, you'd see that there has never been a two-man genin squad. It's always three. The test isn't to actually the bells but to work as a team. Working as a team is what will help us pass. Also, he's known for being chronically late. At least up to 2 hours. So, I'll be at the field tomorrow at 9:45. Naruto explained to his teammates. I wonder how right he is. It wouldn't hurt to have a look at the records. Sasuke thought to himself as Naruto left. I don't believe they'd make someone that shows up that late so often a Junin. Sakura thought skeptically. Seeing that Naruto was gone, Sakura turned to Sasuke and asked, Sasuke, want to go get something to eat? No, Sasuke replied, leaving for the Konoha Shinobi Records office. Naruto headed out to his training field to get some training done before the exam tomorrow. However, when he arrived, he saw that his field was already occupied by two people. Two people in green spandex with fuzzy eyebrows. Who the heck are these guys? Naruto thought as he watched them train. He did have to admit their taijutsu was impressive. Isn't that? Naruto thought as he walked closer to the two training by the logs. Excuse me, but are you Maida guy? Naruto asked. The taller of the green spandex wearing duo turned to look at him and said, yes, I am he. Has the passion of youth led another student to me? Naruto did his best not to run away. I heard some Junins talking about how you and Kakashi are rivals. They were debating over who was the best, but they all agreed that Kakashi won't teach anyone. So, I was hoping that you could teach me taijutsu. Naruto asked, praying that Kunoichi was telling him the truth about guys need to always outdo Kakashi. What? I'll have you know that I am the ultimate taijutsu master, Konoha's green beast. Kakashi could never teach you taijutsu like I could. Guy replied passionately, though slightly angry that someone though Kakashi was a better fighter. Obviously, he'd need to find his eternal rival and challenge him. So, does this mean you'll train me? Naruto asked hopefully. Of course. You shall join me and my apprentice Lee in our training every morning. Together our youthfulness with shine although out Konoha. Guy replied, giving the good guy pose. Thank you very much, said Naruto while bowing gratefully. Now, I want you to kick this log 100 times with each arm. After that, I want you to kick it 100 times with each leg. And finally, I want you to run around this clearing 100 times. Guy said, patting the log next to him. I'm going to kill Kunoichi next time I see him. Naruto thought as he started to punch the log. After a few hours of punching, kicking, and running, the training was over. Very good, Naruto-kun. From now on, I want you to join us for our morning training, where I will train you and Lee in the art of taijutsu. Guy told him, just before he left. Naruto then hanged into different-looking person and grabbed an early supper. He then went back to his apartment and fell asleep, just as the sun was setting. The next morning Naruto woke up early and sent a Kage Bunshin to study under Ibiki, while he went to meet up with Guy and Lee. After 3 hours of doing the same thing as the day before, Naruto hurried off to Training Ground 7 to take Kakashi's test. When he arrived, he saw that Sakura looked like she was going to kill someone, and Sasuke was close behind her in that regard. Let me guess, you both showed up at 8? He asked them. The two of them gave a sigh, thus giving him his answer. A few moments later, Kakashi arrived on the field looking slightly tired. Morning, guys. He greeted them in a chipper mood. You're late, Sakura and Naruto yelled out, while Sasuke scowled at him. Sorry about that, Kakashi said, shrugging his shoulders. Kakashi then pulled out an alarm clock and placed it on a nearby stump. It's set to go off at noon. You have until then to get these bells from me, Kakashi said, pulling out 2 silver bells. Sasuke and Sakura arched their eyebrows at this, remembering what Naruto had said the day before. But sensei, there are only 2 bells, noted Sakura. Yes, the one that doesn't get a bell will be sent back to the academy. You can use whatever means of fighting you have to get them. You won't win unless you come at me with the intent to kill. Kakashi explained. Naruto grabbed a kunai from his holster and arched his arm back preparing to throw it. Before he could even start to bring his arm forward, it was stopped and the tip of the kunai was pressing against his neck. Calm down, I haven't even said start yet, Kakashi said from behind him. The others looked at him with great surprise on their faces. I didn't even see him move, thought Sakura. So, this is a Junin? Thought Sasuke with a mental grin. Well, you seem prepared enough to come at me with the intent to kill. Are you acknowledging me? I'm starting to like you guys. Kakashi said with a slight laugh. Looking at the three genins he continued. Well, let's start this thing, start. With the command given, the three of them were off as fast as they could run. I guess Naruto is right. We need to work together to pass, thought Sakura as she hid in the bushes. I don't want to do it, but I've got no choice if I want to pass. I have to work with them, Sasuke thought as he began to make his way to Sakura. A few moments later, all three of them were hiding under the bushes, deciding what they should do. Interesting, they're working together. There might be hope for this group, thought Kakashi as he sensed their chakras. Suddenly, a plume of smoke arose from the ground. Once the smoke vanished, he saw Naruto standing before him. Come and fight me, Naruto yelled out. You're a bit off, Kakashi told him. The real Naruto was actually still under the bushes with Sasuke and Sakura. I hope the plan of yours works, Dobi, Sasuke whispered. Don't worry, it will. I just send a clone out to fight him and we learn how he fights. Naruto replied logically. The only thing a bit off is your haircut. The Naruto clone yelled out as he charged Kakashi. Fighting lesson, taijutsu. I'll teach you about it, Kakashi said as he reached into his weapons pouch, causing the clone to stop and the genins to tense. Why is he going for a weapon then? Questioned Sakura to herself. The three genins looked on to see that Kakashi had pulled out a book. The genin's sweat dropped and the clone looked surprised. What's wrong? Go ahead and attack me? Kakashi said to the clone. But, why do you have a book? The Naruto clone asked in confusion. Why? Because I want to read what happens next. Don't worry about it. It won't make any difference with you guys, Kakashi replied as he began to read, not even bothering to look at the clone. This pissed the clone off and with a battle cry the clone charged once again. When he got close enough he threw out his fist, only to have it blocked by Kakashi's hand. The clone then aimed a kick to his head. Kakashi ducked down, not even missing a beat. The clone shot himself forward trying to hit him, but Kakashi had disappeared. A shinobi isn't supposed to get caught from behind, idiot, came the voice of Kakashi from behind him. Sakura took notice of the seal and leaned over to Naruto and whispered, Naruto, he's about to use a ninjutsu. When he does, that will be the end of your clone. Then I'll do a quick replacement and the two of you come charging out. Sakura, you hit him low and Sasuke you hit him high, Naruto said. Huh? The clone said, before being replaced. Too late, said Kakashi with a glint in his eye as he rammed his fingers forward while yelling out, Konoha Ancient Taijutsu Supreme Technique, 1000 Years of Pain. He then poked Naruto in the ass and sent him flying. That wasn't a technique, just a really powerful ass poke, Sakura thought to herself, wondering just how crazy was their sensei. Crap, that hurt, Naruto yelled out in his mind as he landed in the lake. Sakura and Sasuke then got up from their hiding place and began to charge Kakashi while he had his back turned. Sakura threw 3 kunai at his stomach, while Sasuke threw 2 to his head. Kakashi grabbed the nearest kunai out of the air and with it, deflected all the rest. Sasuke and Sakura kept running towards him hoping Naruto knew what to do. Just as he was about to dodge them, Kakashi felt a presence behind him. Suddenly, both of his arms were pulled behind him and he heard Naruto say, weren't shinobi not supposed to get caught from behind, sensei? Seeing that Kakashi's arms were trapped, Sakura and Sasuke shot their hands forward and grabbed a bell, yanking them off. Kakashi broke one of his arms free and swung Naruto around, throwing him into Sasuke and Sakura. The 3 genins crashed to the ground. Kakashi then walked over to them and stared down at them. Do the 3 of you understand the answer to this test? He asked in a slightly rough tone. It's teamwork. The test is to see if we can put aside our own interests and work together for the sake of the mission, Naruto said. Yup, for that you guys pass, Kakashi said with an eye smile. As the 3 of them stood up, Kakashi looked each of them in the eye and said, remember, a ninja that breaks the rules is trash. But, a ninja that would abandon his comrades is lower than trash. We will, sensei, the newly passed genin of Team 7 answered. Well, we'll start training and missions tomorrow, team. Be here at 8, Kakashi said to them before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Seeing that they had passed, Naruto turned to his 2 teammates and said, hey, you guys want to get something to eat to celebrate? Shrugging his shoulders, Sasuke replied saying, "Sure." Sakura nodded her head and followed along. A month and a half later. Over the next month and a half, Naruto trained and did missions constantly. Thanks to Naruto's clones, the members of Team 7 were able to do double the amount of missions of a regular genin team, thus giving them a high ranking for completed missions and more money. His training with Guy had been going along nicely, as well. Seeing that his strength was improving, Guy had started to teach him fox-style taijutsu. However, after a few spars with Lee, Naruto saw that he had a long way to go. The two apprentices of Guy had developed a strong bond of friendship together. His training with Ibiki had improved as well. Naruto was now learning how to mix poisons together and was rumored to be hard-ass among the Anbu. The genins of Team 7 had also gotten closer. They had started a tradition of have ramen together every Friday night. Currently, the three genins were in the forest on another mission. "I'm in range of the target," Sasuke said into the comm. "Me too, so am I," came the voices of Sakura and Naruto. "Okay, proceed," Kakashi ordered the genins. The three of them sprang out from behind the trees and dived at the target. "I got him," Naruto cried out as he grabbed a hold of a tail, only to be met with claws to the face. "Oh, Kami, that hurts like hell," Naruto thought as the cat tried to claw Naruto's eyes out. "Are you sure it's the right target? There should be a red ribbon on the left ear," Kakashi asked. Sasuke looked at the cat that was trying to kill his teammate and replied back into the comm, "Yes, we're sure." "Then mission complete. Let's return," Kakashi told him, ordering them back. "Oh, you found my precious Tora. I don't know what I would do without him," cried the fire daimyo's wife, as she squeezed the cat close to her. Much to the cat's great discomfort, the members of Team 7 looked on in sympathy. Well, all but one member did. "Yes, squeeze harder, harder," Naruto thought to himself, giving an insane laugh inside. Though no one could see it, Kyuubi's sweat dropped, wondering just how much of her influenced her jailer. "Team 7, your next mission is babysitting an elder's grandson, shopping in the neighboring village, and helping with the potato harvest," said the Hokage at the mission counter. "Old man, can't you find us a better mission?" asked Naruto in a slightly whiny voice. "Kami, I hope so," thought Sasuke as he looked on. "Geez, how annoying," thought Sakura with a tick on her forehead. "I had a feeling this was coming." Though Kakashi as he looked up from his book. "You idiot, you're just a rookie. Everyone starts with the simple duties and works their way up." Iruka yelled at him. "We've been doing the simple duties. We can now request a higher mission." Naruto shot back. "Naruto, what are you talking about?" asked Sakura with a raised eyebrow, wondering what her teammate was talking about. According to the guidelines, a genin team may not receive a mission ranking higher than D, until said team has completed 35 D-ranked missions. Naruto told her. He then turned to face the Hokage. "How many missions does our file say we've completed?" Picking up Team 7's file, the Hokage saw that they had indeed completed enough missions to request a C-rank mission. According to the stats in the file, Team 7 has completed 105 D-ranked missions. The Hokage told the team. Naruto looked at his teammates. "Well, are you guys in?" he asked them. "Sure," replied Sasuke, eager for a harder mission. "Alright, let's do it," Sakura told him. The three genins looked at their sensei. "You're either with us or against us, sensei," stated Naruto. With a sigh, Kakashi put away his book and said, "I guess I'm up for it." Taking a puff from his pipe and then looking at the members of Team 7, the Hokage said, "If you want it so much, I'll give you a C-rank mission. It's bodyguard escort duty for a certain individual." "Oh, who is it?" asked Naruto, starting to get excited. "Relax, I'm about to introduce him," Sarutobi said. The third then turned to a door off to the side and call out, "Hey, will you come here?" "What's this?" They're all a bunch of super brats. Especially, the midget with the super stupid looking face. "Are they really, ninja?" came the voice of a scruff older man from the door. "Who's the midget with the stupid face?" asked Naruto. Only to have Sakura and Sasuke step closer, making it painfully obvious that he was the shortest member on the team. Seeing this, Naruto simmered in anger. He then turned to Kakashi and asked, "Can I kill him?" "Naruto, you can't kill the person that we've been hired to protect," answered Kakashi. "Yeah, but what about after?" Naruto countered. "Sure, knock yourself out." Looking at the runt wanting to kill him, the man said, "I'm the super expert bridge builder, Tazuna. I expect you to provide me with super protection until I get back to my own country and complete the bridge." Kakashi turned to his genins and said, "Start packing. We leave first thing tomorrow morning." With that, the three genins headed off in different directions to start packing for the long mission ahead. Sakura went to tell her mom and to rub the mission rank in Ino's face. Sasuke went to start packing and pay his respects at the cemetery. Kakashi headed for the memorial stone. Naruto went to inform Ibiki, Guy, Lee, and Tucci that he would be leaving for a long-term mission. Ibiki told him to keep reviewing what he had taught him. Guy said that once he returned, the flames of youth would guide him to the perfect weapon to go with his style. Lee told Naruto to keep getting stronger and that he looked forward to their next spar. Tucci cried upon hearing that his best customer would be gone. The next morning, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura stood at the north gate waiting for Kakashi and the client to arrive. The three looked down the street to see that Kakashi was walking towards them with Tazuna. Seeing the shocked faces of his students, Kakashi asked, "Is there something wrong?" "You're on time," mumbled out Sakura. "Crap," Kakashi thought to himself before saying, "Yes, I wanted to test you. I can't have you getting used to things." Turning to face the Junin, Tazuna asked, "Am I really safe with these brats?" "Well, I am a Junin, so no need to worry, sir." Having heard enough from their client, Naruto spoke in a hard voice saying, "Hey old man, don't mess with shinobi. We're incredible. One day, I'll take the elite title of Hokage. My name is Uzumaki, Naruto. Remember that name. Hokage is this village's #1 ninja, right? I doubt someone like you could do it," said Tazuna before taking a sip from his bottle. "Hey, I'm prepared to do anything to become Hokage. Once I do, you will acknowledge me," Naruto yelled at the older man. Looking the blonde idiot in the eye, Tazuna said, "No I won't, brat. Even if you become Hokage, you still won't be able to force me or anyone else that doesn't want to acknowledge you." Though he didn't say anything, what the old drunk said had deeply affected Naruto. After a few hours of walking, Sakura decided to ask a question. "Tazuna-san, you're from the Wave Country, right? What about it?" asked the old bridge builder. Sakura turned her head to her sensei and said, "Kakashi-sensei, do they have ninjas in that country?" "No, not in the Wave Country. But, in other countries the culture and customs may be different, but hidden villages exist, and so do ninjas," Kakashi explained to his student. As they walked, Kakashi explained to his students the different countries and the leaders that governed over the ninjas there. Mostly, talking about the 5 great nations. While their sensei talked, Naruto took in the sights. Having never been outside the village before, he was hoping to see stuff he'd never get to see in the village. Unfortunately, it was still all the same boring stuff. Same sky, same trees, same dusty road, and same puddle of water in the road. Naruto walked past the puddle, muttered to himself about how nothing looked different. A moment later he looked back up into the sky and realized something. "Oh, shit," thought Naruto, as he realized that there had been no rain. Therefore, there should have been no puddle in the road. At that moment, he heard the sound of a chain wrapping around Kakashi. "One down," the attackers said ominously before yanking on the shuriken chain and ripping Kakashi's body to pieces. "Sensei," Naruto yelled out with Sakura and Sasuke, before hearing, "2 down." Realizing that he was caught, Naruto did a quick substitution jutsu. As they ripped apart the log that Naruto had used, Sasuke leapt into the air and threw a shuriken at the chain. The shuriken hit the chain and was embedded into a tree, surprising the attackers. Before they could yank their chain free, Sasuke threw a kunai into the hole of the shuriken, making it stay connected to the tree. Sasuke then landed on their gauntlet-covered arms and rammed his feet into their faces. Recovering from the strikes to their faces, the attacking ninjas released the chain from their gauntlets and one rushed towards Sakura and Tazuna, while the other ran for Naruto. Reaching for his kunai, Naruto saw that his attacker was about to slash at him. Raising his free hand, Naruto was going to try and grab the gauntlet. However, he miscalculated and was scratched by the sharp claws of his attacker's gauntlet. The other one was almost within striking distance of Tazuna and Sakura, when suddenly he was clotheslined in the neck by an alive Kakashi. "Sensei is alive?" thought Sakura, glad that her teacher wasn't dead. "What a show-off," thought Sasuke, peeved that he didn't get to fight anymore. Phew, we're safe, thought Tazuna with great relief. Kakashi-sensei used kawarimi, thought Naruto as he holstered his kunai, seeing as how his attacker had also been taken out by Kakashi. Kakashi looked at his students. Good work you guys. Naruto, their claws are soaked in poison. We have to remove it quickly. We need to open the wound and release the poisoned blood from your body. Don't move much or else the poison will spread, Kakashi said. Naruto looked down at his bloodied hand and grimace. Ibiki would not like this. Tazuna-san, I need to talk with you, said Kakashi as he looked over at their client. A quick moment later, the attackers were tied up against a nearby tree. These look like hidden mist chunins. These shinobis are known to continue fighting no matter what, said Kakashi. How did you read our movements? One of them asked. On a sunny day like today, when it hasn't rained in days, there isn't going to be a puddle, stated Kakashi. If you knew that, why did you let the brats fight? Asked Tazuna. If I had wanted to I could have killed them both instantly, but there was something I needed to find out first. Who they were after, Kakashi explained as he turned his face towards Tazuna. What do you mean? Asked the aged bridge builder, starting to sweat. Meaning, were they after you or one of us? We haven't heard that there are shinobi after you. Our mission was to simply protect you from gangs and thieves. This has now become at least a B-ranked mission. This was supposed to be simple protection, until you completed the bridge. If it was known that ninjas were after you, this mission would have been set to the more expensive B rank. I'm sure you had a good reason, but it causes problems when you lie about the mission. We are no operating outside of our duties, explained Kakashi, his voice getting more serious with each word. We aren't ready for this mission. Let's quit. We will need medicine for Naruto's wound. We should go back to the village and take him to a doctor, Sakura said frantically. I guess we should return to the village to treat Naruto, Kakashi reasoned. Tired of hearing about quitting the mission, Naruto grabbed his kunai and thrust into the wound, making the cut significantly bigger. Naruto, what are you doing? Screamed Sakura, wondering if her blonde teammate had gone off the deep end or if he was a masochist. I'm not going to need saving ever again. I refuse to be afraid and run. I won't lose to anyone. I swear it by the pain in my left hand, Naruto pledged to himself. With this kunai, I'll protect the old man. We're continuing the mission. We promised to fulfill the mission and I keep my promises, Naruto said with a hard look in his eyes as he faced his team. Naruto, it's good that you are releasing the poison, but any more and you'll die from lack of blood, Kakashi said chipperly, giving him an eye smile. Oh, great. She teaches me what poisons do and how to make them, but does she bother to teach me what to do if I get poisoned? No, she doesn't. I'm going to smack Anko next time I see her, Naruto thought to himself. Examining Naruto's hand, Kakashi saw that the wound was already closed. Must be part of the fox's power, he thought to himself. Hitaki-san, I need to speak with you, said Tazuna from behind Kakashi. Oh, about what? The Junin asked, turning around. It's about the mission. You're right, this job is most likely outside of your duties. It turns out that a super dangerous man is after my life. Who? Kakashi asked, arching an eyebrow in curiosity. You've probably at least heard of his name before. The wealthy shipping magnate, Gato, Tazuna told Kakashi. Kakashi's eye visibly widened at this. He had heard of Gato. Gato? The Gato from the Gato company? That Gato? He's rumored to be one of the world's few extremely wealthy people. Officially, he runs a large shipping company. But, on the inside he sells drugs and other illegal items, using ninjas and gangs to take over businesses and small countries. It was about a year ago when he set his sights on Wave Country. Through money and violence, he quickly took control of the country's shipping industry. Gato now has a monopoly on all of the business traffic in the country. The only thing he has to fear now is the completion of the bridge, continued Tazuna. If you knew that ninjas could be after you, why did you hide that fact when you hired us? Kakashi asked the bridge builder. The Wave Country is super poor. Even the feudal lord has no money. Of course we don't have much money either, not enough for the expensive B-rank mission, Tazuna said with a sigh. Tazuna then told them that it was alright if they left. The worst that would happen was he would be killed and the country would be completely taken over. Kakashi gave in to the old man's speech and soon they were off again, soon coming across a boat and rowing into Wave Country. Meanwhile, in a fortress in the middle of the forest, A short, brown-haired man in a fine silk suit was staring daggers at the tall, deadly man sitting before him next to an extremely large sword. "You failed? I paid you guys a lot of money because I heard you were strong former ninjas," the short man yelled. Faster than anyone could see, the tall man grabbed his sword and leveled it at the short man's neck. Just a hair's width from his Adam's apple. "Stop your bitching, Gatu. This time I'll go myself and with this head-slicing clever, kill them all." "Are you sure? It seems the old man has hired some skilled ninjas and with the failure of the Demon Brothers, they'll be better prepared." "Who do you think I am? There's a reason I'm called the Demon of the Hidden Mist, Momochi Zabuza," the man now known as Zabuza said. A few hours later the three genin were sitting around the table at Tezuna's house. After coming across the river, they had an encounter with the missing mist ninja known as Zabuza. Kakashi engaged the missing nin and for a while seemed to have the upper hand, until he got caught in a water prison. Luckily, thanks to his students, Kakashi was freed and beat Zabuza. Just as he was about to kill him, a few senbon needles came out of nowhere and struck the mist nin in the neck, killing him. From the trees, appeared a mist hunter nin and took Zabuza's body away. A moment later, Kakashi had passed out due to chakra exhaustion, thus causing the three genins to carry him to Tezuna's house. As they walked, Sasuke explained what the Sharingan was. "Are you alright, sensei?" asked Tezuna's daughter, Tsunami. "Yes, I'm fine. I just can't move for a week or so," replied Kakashi, who was lying on a futon. "So, who do you think that masked kid was?" asked Sakura to her teammates. "Well, by that mask, I'd say he's part of Hidden Mist's special Hunter Nin team. Hunter Nins are also known as body erasers. Their duty is to completely dispose of the body without a trace. A ninja's body has within it secrets of the village's ninjutsu, information on different chakra types, herbs, and other things that will reveal things about the village. A ninja's body can reveal important information. So, by disposing of the missing nins who have abandoned their village, the hunter nins protect the information from getting out. They are the specialists who guard their village's secrets. No sound, no smell. That is a ninja's end," Kakashi told her and the others. While Sakura found it creepy, Naruto and Sasuke didn't really care. Elsewhere, the masked hunter nin laid Zabuza's body down on the forest floor and began to move his hand towards the senbon needles in Zabuza's neck. Suddenly, Zabuza's hand shot up and grabbed his wrist. The missing nin opened his eyes and looked at the hunter nin. "I'll do it myself," Zabuza said with a slight growl. The swordsman reached for the senbon needles and yanked them out of his neck. "You'll really die if you keep pulling them out like that, Zabuza-sama," the hunter nin said. "How long are you going to keep wearing that stupid mask?" Zabuza asked, ignoring the hunter nin's statement. "It reminds me of the old days. Plus, it was useful for this act," the hunter nin said as he removed the mask, showing a rather beautiful face underneath. "If I hadn't saved you, you definitely would have been killed. If you were going to put me in a momentary death, you didn't have to use my neck. You could have aimed for a safer acupuncture point. You are annoying as always," Zabuza said as he adjusted the bandage mask to cover his neck. "You're right," replied the hunter nin with a smile. Much later, Naruto glared up at the tree he had been climbing. After some talking and thinking about it, it was agreed that Zabuza was still alive. So, Kakashi decided to train the three genins in tree climbing, by only using their feet and chakra. Naruto had already learned a lot about the usage of chakra, but had so far never tried anything. Damn, reading is one thing, but doing it is a whole different story. He thought with a grunt as he stood up and gazed upward at his mark. At least he was doing better than Sasuke, though not by much, and Sakura had outclassed both of them. A few hours later, the sun had set and the tired genins dragged themselves back to Tezuna's house. A few days later, Sakura was sent to guard Tezuna and escort him around the village, while Sasuke and Naruto continued to train on tree climbing. During her time of guarding him around the village, Sakura learned just how poor the village truly was and Tezuna's reasons for building the bridge. Naruto and Sasuke spent their day training on tree climbing. Sasuke had no past Naruto, but Naruto was catching up to him. That evening the Konoha team learned about Inari's father and how he had been a hero in the village, only to be brutally executed in public by Gato. Naruto then left to continue his training into the night. The next morning, Naruto was awaked by a stranger telling him he'd catch a cold if he kept sleeping on the forest floor. After finding out that the person was collecting herbs, Naruto decided to help out. "Is this the plant you want?" Naruto asked. "Yes, thank you for helping out. You sure are working early this morning." "So are you. What are you doing here at this time of the morning?" "I'm training," Naruto told the herbalist. "I take it then, by that forehead protector, that you're a ninja?" "Yes, I am." "Wow, you're incredible. Why are you training?" "I want to get stronger." "You already look strong." "Thanks, but I want to get even stronger." "Why is that?" "So I can become the strongest ninja in my village and achieve my dream. And right now, I need to prove something to someone." Naruto replied with great conviction. "Is that for yourself or someone else?" Seeing Naruto's confused look, the herbalist gave a soft laugh. "What's so funny?" asked Naruto, wondering if he had missed something. "Nothing. But tell me, do you have an important person?" Naruto thought for a moment before the herbalist continued. "When a person has something important to protect, that's when they can truly become strong." "Yeah, I understand that very well." The herbalist then stood up and looked Naruto in the eyes. "Then you will become strong. Let's meet again someday," the herbalist said, walking away. "Oh, and I'm a boy." Naruto looked on in shock. The entire time he thought the herbalist's hand been a woman. Damn, he's more in touch with his feminine side than Sakura. Sasuke soon came to join Naruto in the forest, and the two of them spent the entire day practicing tree climbing. By nightfall they had made it to the top, even though they both could barely move. However, over dinner, there was a blow-up with Inari yelling at Naruto, wanting to know why he tried so hard. Naruto told him that if he kept crying nothing ever would change. After that, Naruto left and Inari went outside. Kakashi eventually came outside and joined him. Kakashi explained how Naruto had an even harder life than Inari, but not once had he ever been seen crying. The next day, Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke escorted Tazuna to the bridge, while Naruto slept in due to overtraining. Eventually, they came to the bridge to find everyone had been attacked and mist was closing in around the bridge. A moment later, they were surrounded by 6 Zabuza water clones. With the command for Kakashi, Sasuke leapt into action and disposed of them. Meanwhile, Naruto had woken up to find that the team had left without him. Cursing himself for sleeping in, Naruto quickly got dressed and ran out the door. As he ran through the trees, Naruto heard an odd noise. When he went to investigate, he saw that a boar had been killed with several sword slashes to its body. He looked around and saw that several cuts were also on the trees. They all seemed to lead back to Tazuna's house. Feeling that something was wrong, Naruto rushed back to the house to check on Tsunami and Inari. He arrived just in time to see Inari charge at 2 samurai thugs, to stop them from taking his mother. Just as they were about to kill him, Naruto used Kawarimi and saved Inari and Tsunami. Naruto then distracted the thugs and quickly took them out with his clones, knocking them out from behind, thus showing Inari that heroes truly existed. He then apologized to the younger boy and told Inari that he had become strong. Naruto then told him it was okay to cry if you were happy. Making sure Inari could handle things there, Naruto ran off once again, heading for the bridge. Back on the bridge, Sasuke had engaged the fake hunter nin known as Haku in battle. For a while, they were on even ground. Sasuke was able to match him blow for blow. Then without warning, Haku began to do one-handed seals, something the Leaf team had never seen before. Sasuke dodged the attack and once more engaged him in hand-to-hand combat, but this time Sasuke landed a hit on him. This caused Haku to use his special jutsu, demonic ice mirrors. Sasuke was now trapped in a prison of ice mirrors. Shocking everyone, Haku stepped into the ice and began to appear on all of the ice mirrors. Kakashi ran over to help, but was stopped by Zabuza. The missing nin told him that he was to be Kakashi's opponent. Seconds later, Sasuke began to yell in pain as hundreds of senbon needles started to starch him, causing cuts, and a few of them piercing him. Sakura threw a kunai in between the mirrors to hopefully give Sasuke a weapon to defend himself. Unfortunately, it was blocked by Haku. What no one expected though was for Haku to be knocked out of the mirror when his mask was hit by a shuriken. Everyone looked over to see that Naruto Uzumaki had arrived. Sasuke thought that with Naruto on the outside and him on the inside of the mirrors, he stood a better chance of finding a way around the ice. However, he should have known his knuckle-headed teammate better, cause a moment later Naruto was inside the ice mirrors with him. After trying to melt it with a fire jutsu and smash all of the mirrors with Kage Bunshin, Kakashi realized why none of his students' attacks were working. Haku had a bloodline limit. Haku asked for Naruto and Sasuke not to hate him, but he had to protect his dream. Even if it meant killing his heart and killing them. Kakashi knew that his students didn't have it in them to kill and realized that he would have to finish their battle. But first he had to get past Zabuza. So, Kakashi lifted up his forehead protector revealing his Sharingan. Seeing the Sharingan revealed, Zabuza summoned a large amount of mist. Knowing that the flaw of the Sharingan was that you had to be able to see the opponent to use it properly. For the first moment, Kakashi thought that with the mist so thick that Zabuza wouldn't be able to see him. He was surprised to see the missing nin appear behind him, with his eyes closed. Zabuza reminded Kakashi that he was an expert in silent killing and could attack his target by sound only. He then realized that Zabuza was going after Tazuna and ran as fast as he could to intercept him, just as the missing nin swung his blade at the old man. Back in the ice prison, things weren't going well for Naruto and Sasuke. Both of them had needles everywhere, but for some reason Sasuke's vision was becoming clearer and had even been able to dodge a few attacks. Once again Haku threw his needles at them. Sasuke jumped out of the way, pushing Naruto and himself away from the attack. As he stood up, Haku saw that Sasuke had awakened his Sharingan. Seeing that it was time to end this fight, Haku aimed to take out Naruto instead of Sasuke. Seeing that the masked nin was going for Naruto, Sasuke jumped in front of Naruto. With a groan of pain, Naruto got to his knees. He had been starting to do more intense training with Guy and Lee, but he had never been in a fight like this. Every bone in his body ached and screamed in agony. This made it clearer to him than ever before, he did have a long way to go. He looked over his shoulder to see the masked nin on the ground and Sasuke in front of him. As his eyes traveled upwards, he took more notice of Sasuke's wounds. Especially, the 6 needles sticking out of his neck. "What's with that face? Dobi?" Sasuke asked in a rasping breath. "Why? I never asked for your help, Teme." Naruto shouted out, not wanting to accept what was in front of him. "I don't know, my body just moved on its own." No longer able to stand, Sasuke's body fell back. "That man, my brother, I promised myself I wouldn't die until I killed him." Sasuke rasped out in Naruto's arms, closing his eyes as his final breath left his body. Naruto continued to stare at Sasuke's face, as if expecting him to wake up. He never noticed Haku standing up, but did hear the masked nin's words. "He landed a blow on me and without flinching, died to protect you." To protect a precious person. Knowing I was a trap, he was still able to jump in. He is a shinobi that deserves respect. "Is this your first death of a friend? This is the way of the shinobi." Haku spoke as he stepped back into his mirror. "Shut up," Naruto growled out. He was tired of talking, tired of being weak, and tired of not being able to do anything. It was time to show the world. Naruto raised up his head at the masked nin, showing the vast changes he had gone through. Gone were the thin wicker marks, they were now more defined. His nails had sharpened into claws. His hair was slightly darker and more feral. The greatest changes were in his eyes. Gone were the once shimmering blue orbs of hope. In their place were 2 bright red, slit pupilled eyes. With them came a tsunami of rage. "I'll kill you," Naruto yelled out in rage. For the first time in so many years, Haku felt something he thought he'd never feel again. Fear. Bright red chakras swirled around Naruto's body, cutting into the concrete of the bridge. The needles in his body shot out as the cuts on his body healed. The chakra began to take shape above Naruto's head, in the form of a giant fox head. The head roared as Naruto sprang into action. As Zabuza and Kakashi continued to battle it out, they felt the chakra emanating from Naruto. It was a power unlike anything ever felt before. Did the seal break? Kakashi thought to himself. Whose doing is this? It can't be Kakashi's, it's too strong to be his. Zabuza thought to himself, wondering for a moment how Haku was faring. Kakashi removed a scroll from his pocket and opened it, tracing a smear of blood from his thumb over it. "Zabuza, if you can hear me, neither of us has time to waste. I'm a busy man, you're a busy man, so let's end this now." Kakashi said until he missed as the scroll snapped closed and landed between his thumbs and index fingers. Sounds interesting. What can you do in a situation like this? Show me, Kakashi, spoke Zabuza's voice from somewhere in the mist. Things were looking bleak for Haku. The boy had deflected his needles with only chakra. As he tried to attack from above, he had dodged out of the way and grabbed him before he could get back to a mirror. Then, with one mighty swing, had punched him through his mirror. Haku flew back and landed with a thud. The force of the blow sent him rolling back even further. Just as the mask had cracked, so too had his mirror. The mirrors shattered to the ground, while the mask slowly broke off. He saw the boy charging at him, and as the final piece broke off, Haku knew he had failed to protect his precious person. It was the end for him. Haku waited for Naruto to strike him down, but it didn't happen. Naruto had stopped mere inches from his face. "You're that guy from yesterday," Naruto said, recognizing Haku. "Why did you stop? I killed your precious friend, yet you can't kill me?" Naruto looked back at Sasuke's body. "Damn it," Naruto yelled out as he struck Haku. The force of the blow knocked him back, but wasn't enough to kill him. As he got to his feet, he told Naruto that people often made this mistake, in not killing their enemy. Letting them live without a dream or being needed. Letting them feel the pain of living. He told Naruto that by beating him, he has taken his reason for living. As Zabuza had no need for a weak shinobi. Naruto couldn't understand how someone like Zabuza could be important to him. Haku then began to explain about his birth and how because of his and his mother's bloodline, his father had killed his mother and tried to kill him. Haku explained about the country of Mist's civil wars and how because of those wars people with bloodline were feared and hunted down. Revealing that you had a bloodline meant death. After killing his father in self-defense, he realized that he was an unwanted person. Naruto was seeing the boy's point as he spoke. Haku asked Naruto about his dream. How if one person acknowledged him, wouldn't that person become his precious person? Naruto thought about Iruka, the first person to acknowledge him. Haku told him how Zabuza took him in, knowing about the bloodline, and acknowledged him. He was happy to be wanted. Zabuza needed him to be his weapon and he was. Haku looked Naruto in the eyes and said, "Naruto-kun, please kill me." After slamming the scroll onto the ground, Kakashi has summoned his nin dogs to attack from underground. As Zabuza had his eyes closed, he didn't see the attack until it was too late. Now, he was being held in place as the mist slowly started to disappear. Kakashi explained his reasons for letting Zabuza land his attacks on him. How thanks to his blood-soaked weapons, Kakashi's nin dogs could find him. Zabuza watched as Kakashi did a few hand seals and summoned chakra into his right hand. Kakashi told him how his ambition was dangerous. Zabuza argued that he was fighting for his ideals. Seeing that Zabuza was refusing to surrender, Kakashi began to charge. Naruto looked at Haku, not understanding his request. "Why are you hesitating?" Haku asked. "I don't understand. Is being strong the only reason for you to be alive? Something other than fighting, you could have been acknowledged for something else. The day I met you in the forest, I thought you were like me. You should be able to understand. I'm sorry that you have to stain your hands. Is this the only way?" "Yes," Haku answered in a soft voice. Naruto unsheathed a kunai from his side holster and held it in a striking position. "Please, fulfill your own dreams. If we had met under different circumstances, we might have been friends," Naruto said as he readied himself. "Thank you," Haku said as Naruto started to run at him. Haku knew that Naruto would one day be a strong ninja, but what this would mean he would never see. Just as Naruto was about to strike him, Haku sensed something. He sensed a massive amount of chakra rushing at Zabuza. Thinking quickly, he grabbed Naruto's arm, blocking the attack. "Sorry, Naruto-kun, but I can't die yet," Haku told the surprised boy and rapidly went through hand seals. A fraction of a second later, Haku was gone. Kakashi thrust his head forward, aiming right at Zabuza's stomach. The lightening chakra of his attack burnt through the flesh. The nin dogs poofed out of existence, their summoning time over. Kakashi stared wide-eyed at the sight before him. It wasn't Zabuza that he had struck, but Haku instead. Kakashi's arm was straight through where the boy's heart was moments ago. Zabuza looked on as the warm droplets of Haku's blood slowly slid down his face. Back in the village, Inari had been going door to door trying to get support to go to the bridge and fight Gato. He was at the last house and so far, he had no support. Gichi-san, please open up. Come to the bridge with me. If we all go together, we can defeat Gatu's men. Inari shouted through the door. I'm sorry Inari, we don't want to fight anymore. Even your father, the man called a hero, is no longer here. If we fight, there will be sacrifices. We don't want to lose anything precious again. Nobody wants to do anything they'd regret, came the voice of Gichi from behind the door. I don't want to have any regrets either. That's why, we have to fight. I love my mom, my grandpa, you Gichi-san, and everyone in this city. I know now, that you can't protect anything by being a cry-baby. It is better to die on our feet, than to live on our knees. Inari said. The young boy then left to ready himself for the bridge. Inside the house, Gichi's wife sat at their table. Inari has become a man. Are you really going to let him go alone? She asked. Back at his house, Inari's mother was trying to dissuade her son from going to the bridge. Inari told her that even though he was a child, he knew what it meant to fight. Seeing some figures in the distance from the clearing mist, Naruto ran towards them. He was shocked to see Kakashi's arms sticking through the chest of Haku. Now out of his daze, Zabuza grabbed his sword and swung it forward, intending to cut both of them in half. Kakashi jumped back and laid Haku on the ground. Naruto was angry at what Zabuza had tried to do, even after how much Haku cared for him. Zabuza was just going to cut through him. Kakashi ordered Naruto to stand his ground, it wasn't his fight. Seeing Naruto, Sakura called out to him. She asked where was Sasuke and upon seeing the pained look on his face, knew something had happened. Zabuza charged at Kakashi, but was stopped by a hard kick to the gut. Sakura wanted to go and see what had happened to Sasuke, but refused to leave Tazuna. The old bridge builder offered to go with her, so she wouldn't be breaking her orders. Soon she was standing above the cold body of her beloved. Sakura just stared down at Sasuke's cold body, not wanting to believe the sight before her eyes. Upon hearing Tazuna saying it was fine to cry, Sakura explained how she had memorized the 100 shinobi sayings and that one of the sayings was to always keep emotions on the inside. Unable to stop herself, Sakura began to cry. Tazuna stared down in pity. This was no way for someone to live. The battle between Zabuza and Kakashi raged on. Zabuza's left arm was paralyzed, so he was using his right hand to swing his sword. As he rushed at Kakashi, he was slugged hard in the face. Zabuza swung his blade only to have Kakashi appear behind him. Kakashi stabbed Zabuza's right arm as he ducked a backswing from the blade. Now, both of his arms were useless. A voice from the other side of the bridge drew their attention. They all looked over to see a short man in a business suit with a small army of thugs. It seemed Gatu had arrived. Gatu reviled how he was planning to kill Zabuza. Seeing that he had been betrayed, there was no longer a reason to fight or kill the bridge builder. As they were talking, Gatu walked forward and proceeded to kick the dead body of Haku for his broken arm. Naruto was pissed at the sight. What are you doing, you bastard? Naruto shouted out. He then charged at Gatu, only to be stopped by his sensei. Say something, weren't you friends? Naruto shouted at Zabuza. Shut up kid, Haku is already dead. Don't you feel anything at all? Weren't the two of you always together? As I was used by Gatu, I used Haku. That's all it was. In the world of shinobi there are only those who use, and those who are used. We shinobi are simply tools. What I wanted was his blood, not him. I have no regrets. Do you really mean that? Naruto asked as his sensei tried to stop him. Stop Naruto. We aren't fighting him anymore. Kakashi said. I don't care. He's still my enemy. Naruto replied. Naruto then pointed a finger at Haku's dead body and said, he really loved you. You were his precious person. He loved you that much. Do you really feel nothing? Do you really not feel anything at all? If I become as strong as you, will I become like you? He threw away his life for you. Without his own dream, to die as a tool. Brat, don't you dare say another word. Zabuza said as he slowly turned to face Naruto, a small tear dripping down the side of his face. It pained him to have to fight you. Haku fought not only for me, but for you as well. He was too kind. I'm glad I got to face you in the end. Yeah, kid, you may be right. A shinobi is still a human. We may not be able to become emotionless tools. I've lost. Kid, let me borrow your kunai. All the while he spoke, Zabuza had been chewing away at his mask, so when Naruto tossed over his kunai, It was caught in his mouth by the handle. With the kunai in place, Zabuza charged forward. Gato ran back into the mob of thugs, telling them to kill them. As the thugs watched the injured Zabuza run towards them, it looked like an image of a demon had appeared above him. Gato looked on as horror as Zabuza cut through the thugs. Zabuza wasn't slowing down, even though he had blades sticking out of his back. Soon Zabuza had broken through and stabbed Gato in the chest. Zabuza yanked the kunai out and slit his throat open. As Gato died, Zabuza turned around and upon seeing the crazed look in his eyes, the thugs gave him a wide berth. After all, he had just taken out over half of their numbers. Naruto and everyone else watched as Zabuza fell to the ground. Don't look away. This is the end of a man who lived a difficult life. Kakashi said to Naruto. A voice called out in the darkness. Sasuke slowly opened eyes to see Sakura kneeling next to him. Sakura, you're heavy? He gasped out. Seeing that Sasuke was alive, Sakura hugged him in joy. Sakura soon began to gush over Sasuke, eventually telling him that Naruto was fine and Haku was dead. Sakura yelled over at Naruto telling him that Sasuke was fine. Naruto looked behind him to see Sasuke standing up. At this point the thugs decided to make themselves known again. They explained to the ninjas how they were going to ravage the town as a response to them killing Gato. He wasn't much to them, but he was a meal ticket. As they ran forward in mass, a single arrow came down from the sky. Everyone turned to look at the far sea of the bridge to see the entire village, each of them with weapons drawn. The thugs looked to see that Naruto and Kakashi had preformed Kage Bunshin, resulting in several copies of them. Not wanting to get into a fight, they turned tail and ran. Scrambling back into the boat they had arrived in. And this is where things get different. After the thugs had left, Kakashi and Naruto walked over to Zabuza's fallen body. It looks like it's over, Kakashi. I have a request, Kakashi. I want to see his face one last time. Gasped out the dying nin. Sure, replied Kakashi as he slid his forehead protector back over his Sharingan. He looked at Naruto and said, go get Zabuza's sword. Kakashi then knelt down and began to carefully pull the blades out of Zabuza's back. Naruto walked over to Zabuza's large sword and picked it up. He was surprised by the weight of the large weapon. Wow, this would be one impressive sword to use. The young blonde thought to himself as he carried the weapon back to Kakashi and Zabuza. His sensei had just pulled the last blade out and was now carefully picking up Zabuza in his arm. As he lifted up the missing mist nin, it began to softly snow. Hey sensei, is it true what Zabuza-san and Haku-kun said? Is this really what being a shinobi is all about? Asked Naruto. Sadly, for many it is Naruto. Ninjas aren't known for living very peaceful lives. Each and every ninja has to live and deal with that issue. Kakashi replied to his young student. Okay, I've just decided. I'm going to be a ninja in my own way and change what it means to be one. Naruto said confidently. Kakashi gave Naruto an upside-down eye smile. If anyone could, it would be him. Kakashi carefully knelt down and laid Zabuza's dying body next to Haku. Naruto then placed his sword next to him. Are you crying, Haku? Zabuza thought as he looked at the face of the boy who had become a son to him. If I could, I'd like to go to the same place as you, Zabuza rasped out. You can, Zabuza, said Kakashi. Yes, but first I have to do something. Zabuza turned his head to Kakashi and Naruto, staring up at them from his position on the ground. Here brat, take my sword, he said to Naruto. Why? Asked Naruto as he walked over. You said you planned to change the meaning of what it means to be a ninja. So, I've decided to give you my sword to help you. It's the duty of a member of Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananan Shu, to pick the successor of his blade. And, I've picked you kid. I want you to take Kabikuri Hocho and carve your way of the ninja into the world. I'll be looking down on you from time to time. Being my successor makes you part of Mist now. That'll be fun to see. Rasped out Zabuza. With his dying strength, he lifted up Kabikuri's handle off the ground and nudged it over to Naruto, who had knelt down by him. Kakashi had walked over to check on Sasuke. As Naruto grasped the blade, Zabuza handed him his forehead protector and then turned back to face Haku. Hey, brat, Gatu's base is located about 3 miles south of here. Rasped out Zabuza. Why are you telling me this? Asked the curious leaf nin. The most valuable thing To a shinobi? Is knowledge? I figured, you might find something there, Zabuza told his successor. A moment later, Zabuza breathed his last and was no more. Naruto stood and shed a silent tear for the ninjas who taught him so much. A few hours later, they had bandaged up Sasuke, who would need to stay in bed for a few days, and buried Zabuza and Haku. Night had fallen over the village and for the first time in years, everyone was sleeping peacefully. All, except one, that is. Naruto Uzumaki was wide awake. I guess it's time, Naruto thought to himself. He silently got out of bed, grabbed his pack and climbed out the window. He then summoned a cage Bunshin to stay in the house. With the Bunshin taking his place in bed, Naruto ran into the forest. Once he was sure he was safely alone, Naruto opened his pack and unzipped a hidden compartment inside. He took the objects out, which happened to be some clothes, and began to change. A moment later and Naruto was no longer the genin from Konoha, he was now the doctor. Time to operate, Naruto thought to himself once his mask was securely in place. Naruto then took off running east. Soon, he had arrived at two freshly dug graves. The graves of Zabuza and Haku. Naruto began to dig up Haku as he thought back to how he had learned what he was about to do. Flashback no jutsu. 3 days before genin team placements. Naruto sat in the field mediating. Soon, he would himself in his mindscape. I guess Kyuubi wants to talk. He thought as he walked towards the demon's room. It's good to see that you've started to get stronger, brat, said the fox as Naruto stepped in. I'm rather impressed by your torture code name, the doctor. So, I've decided to teach you a very special ability to go with it. Oh, what? Asked Naruto, wondering what the fox could teach him to go with his code name. Tell me, have you ever heard of Kekkei Genkai? Asked Kyuubi to her host. Naruto shook his head at this. A Kekkei Genkai is what's known as a bloodline limit. They are abilities passed down from parent to child. These abilities are stored in the DNA of the person's body. The DNA is located in the cells of a person's body, and the body is completely made up of cells. Everything from your hair to your blood is made up of cells. Therefore, it all holds the DNA. What you will need to do, separate the part of the DNA that has the bloodline from the rest and then inject it into yourself. The ability I'm going to teach you will help with that, explained the fox. So, for the rest of the day, Naruto learned how to take bloodlines. End flashback. Naruto now had Haku's body unearthed and slightly unwrapped. He opened his jacket and took out a syringe and a small bottle. Naruto then stuck the needle of the syringe into Haku's body and began to take out blood. Once the syringe was full, he pulled it out and with great focus, Naruto made a bowl with his chakra. He poured the blood into the bowl and then began to focus hard. Naruto chakra turned green. Soon, a separate smaller and darker liquid formed apart from the blood. Naruto poured this into the bottle and proceeded to do the same thing over and over again several more times. After several sticks with the needle into Haku's body to bottle was full. Naruto discarded the needle and carefully reburied Haku. He then took out a second syringe with a much larger barrel and placed the needle into the DNA. Naruto pulled up on the plunger, forcing the DNA into the barrel. Once it was all in, Naruto quickly discarded the bottle. He then looked at the syringe that was about to change his life. Naruto sat down on the ground and rolled up his right pants leg. Here goes nothing, he thought to himself as he stabbed himself in the calf with the needle. Naruto pushed down of the plunger, forcing the DNA into his body. Hey, that wasn't so bad, he thought as the last of the DNA had gone in and he was pulling the needle out. It was at that moment that a blinding pain took a hold of him, starting at his calf and working its way to the rest of his body. Shit, this hurts, Naruto screamed inside his head, but he dare not open his mouth outside, for fear of being discovered. After several agonizing minutes of pain, it was all gone. He felt perfectly fine. Is it over? He asked himself. Yes, you have the Mist Nin's bloodline, came the voice of Kyuubi from within him. Are you sure? I don't feel any different, Naruto asked the fox. Yes, you didn't go through all of that pain for nothing. Though it may take you a while to learn to use this Kekkei Genkai to its fullest, as you don't have anyone to teach you about it. The fox replied. Naruto saw the nine tails point. According to Haku, he was the last one with this bloodline, so there was no one to teach him how to use it. Naruto stood up and discarded the syringe. He then stretched his legs and arms for a moment, before running off south as fast as he could. After about half an hour of running, Naruto had arrived at what he assumed was Gadu's base. He hid up in the trees to take a look around. Within a few minutes, he could tell that there were still some low-level ninjas around on the bottom floor, but there didn't seem to be any on the upper levels. Luckily, for Naruto there was an open window, so he wouldn't have to worry about making too much noise with unlocking one. After climbing through the window, Naruto took a look around the room and saw that it was rather barren. Just a large bed, a few chairs, and a desk with a scroll on it. Since he was looking for anything of value, Naruto decided to take a look at the scroll. After all, Gadu was dead, so this stuff was of no use to him anymore. Opening the scroll, Naruto was surprised to see that it was a scroll of instructions on how to weld kabikari. So, I guess this would have been Zabuza's room, Naruto thought to himself, as he placed the scroll in the pocket of his jacket. Naruto then left the room and looked around the others. In most of the rooms, he didn't find anything interesting. Just some kunai, exploding tags, and a few jutsu scrolls. One of them was called, Juryoku Seal Technique. Naruto didn't bother to read the full description of it, but it seemed to help with muscle-resistant training. He'd show it to Guy and see what he thought. Naruto did wonder though, if seals could do that, what else could they do? Soon, he was at the last door and opened it. He was surprised to see someone in the room. By the look of it, it had to be Gadu's office. It seemed that one of the renegade ninjas from Zabuza's group had decided to raid the office. He had opened the vault, behind the desk, and was reading the papers from a file. About this time the door had creaked, causing the ninja to look up at Naruto. Shit, the shinobi and Naruto thought at the same time. As Naruto reached for his kunai, he was surprised to see a small blink of light in front of the mist shinobi. From the light came two kunai. The shinobi grabbed them and threw them at Naruto. Seeing the oncoming weapons, Naruto quickly threw his own and knocked the ninja's kunai out of the air. What the ninja hadn't expected was a third kunai. So, he was deeply shocked when he felt the steel of a sharpened kunai rip through the side of his neck. With the massive amounts of blood he was losing from the cut, he was soon dead. Naruto hadn't wanted to kill, but no one could know he was here. Cautiously, he crossed the large office and confirmed that the ninja was indeed dead. Looks like he has a Kekkei Genkei. Go on and take it, came the voice of Kyuubi. It did make sense to him. So, kneeling down next to the dead shinobi, Naruto began to focus his chakra on the ninja's body as he pulled out a small bottle, not even bothering to use a syringe to take out blood. Once he pulled out enough DNA, Naruto filled the bottle and took out another syringe. After filling the barrel of the syringe, Naruto then stuck himself in both arms and both legs. After a few moments the pain passed, though it hadn't been as bad as it was with Haku's bloodline. Interesting, it seems this shinobi had two bloodlines. One of them was that blinking you saw. Apparently, it allows the user to place an infinite number of items in a pocket space and call forth any item from anywhere. Came Kyuubi's voice after the merging was done. Quick question, what's a pocket dimension? Asked Naruto to his demon. A pocket dimension is a space of reality that exists, but does not. No time passes there. Try sending one of your kunai there. Just think of the kunai floating in a void. Kyuubi said. Following the demon's advice, Naruto took out a kunai and began to focus. A moment later, there was a blink and the kunai was gone. Naruto blinked in surprise and focused again. This time, calling the kunai back with another blink. This could be a lot of fun. He thought to himself. Hey Kyuubi, what's the other bloodline? Naruto asked the fox, wondering what else he had gotten from the ninja. The other bloodline seems to be a memory viewer. Stated Kyuubi. What do you mean? Summon some chakra into your hand, while thinking about a memory. Naruto summoned some chakra into his hand while thinking of receiving his forehead protector from Iruka. He watched in fascination as in his hand a small orb started to form. After a moment, it was finished. The orb was a pale yellow in color and was about the size of a large marble. Now, you just simply summon chakra into whichever hand is holding the marble and you or anyone else can see the memory. Explained the demon sagely. Naruto thought it was a little dull, but it would come in handy if he should ever see something that he would have to prove. He silently placed the memory marble in his pocket as he walked over to the desk to see what the ninja had been reading. Skimming through the papers, Naruto saw that it was papers on Gatu's different businesses. Nothing about them really grabbed his attention, except for the fact that Gatu was stupid enough to keep records of both sides of his business together. The last paper was a bit of a surprise though. It was the location of Gatu's vast fortune. Wondering if it would work, Naruto closed his eyes and began to concentrate hard. He imaged summoning the money to him, and a moment later there was a blink. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and quickly opened them completely, at the sight of all of the money. Holy crap, he thought in surprise. There was more money on the desk and around the desk than he'd ever make. Well, it won't do Gatu any good, so. Naruto thought as he blinked the money to his void. You know, mortal, with that bloodline, you probably could access my treasures on this plane. Kyuubi spoke suddenly. How so? What treasures? Asked Naruto. Kyuubi then explained about how she had collected vast amounts of treasures and hid them away in a few well-selected parts of the world. Naruto asked why the demon was telling him this. To which she replied, that if she was going to be sealed, the treasures should be put to good use. After learning the location of the different treasure spots, Naruto focused once more, and again there was a blink. Naruto looked around in shock and had to bite his tongue to stop himself from yelling out in surprise. The entire room was filled with treasure, and it was a rather large room. The room was large enough to fit Naruto's apartment in it twice with room left over. All around the room there were piles of gold and silver, scrolls, some weapons, and other items. Naruto quickly sent everything to his void. With Gatu's money, now his money, and Kyuubi's treasures, he'd be set for life. I guess when I get back to Konoha, I should do some shopping. Naruto thought to himself. Naruto then left the room and began to head back to Zabuza's room to make his escape from Gatu's fortress. He was able to get to the room and out of the fortress without being detected. However, he was unprepared for the explosion that had gone off when he landed on a branch. Naruto rolled as he crashed down on the forest floor. He sprang up immediately, holding a kunai in each hand, and he looked around on guard. Kage Bunshin. Naruto yelled out, summoning 7 clones. Up from above 2 figures dropped down. Naruto and his clones were cautious as they stepped closer. As they stepped into the moonlight, Naruto could see that they were both male and shinobi of Iwagakure. The shorter of the 2 men, and by the looks of it, the older of the 2, had bright red hair and was wearing a large brown-colored headpiece with 3 crown-like ridges. On the headpiece was his forehead protector, and over his cheeks and the bridge of his nose was a piece of black armor. He was wearing a light purple outfit with brown armor. The taller of the 2 Iwa nins was a completely different story. He was indeed tall, easily the tallest person Naruto had ever seen. The Iwa nin looked to be a head taller than Guy and was covered in bright red steam armor. He even had a furnace on his back that was emitting steam. Well, seems like we got lucky, Roshi-senpai? Said the taller of the 2, glancing at his shorter partner. It does, Han-san, replied the older shinobi. The taller one, now known as Han, looked back at Naruto and said, "Alright, punk. Tell us where your boss is and we won't kill you." "What boss? Who the fuck are you?" Naruto shouted back. "I am Roshi the Jinchuriki of Yonbi, and this is Han the Jinchuriki of Gobi," replied Roshi. "Brothers?" asked Naruto, surprised at seeing other Jinchurikis. "Actually, no," started Roshi, before Naruto cut him off. "No, I mean, brothers, as in, you are also Jinchurikis too?" said Naruto. "Yes, I take it from how you asked that question, that you are one as well," asked Roshi. "Yes, I am Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of Kyuubi," Naruto replied. This caused both of the Iwa nin's eyes to widen in shock. "That's impossible. The Kyuubi was killed by the 4th Hokage of Konoha," stated Han, in disbelief. "No, it's true. Kyuubi is sealed inside of me. Watch," said Naruto. He began to carefully focus his chakra, and soon he had Kyuubi's red chakra flowing around him. The chakra then molded together above him and formed the head of a vicious-looking fox. Han and Roshi looked on in surprise as the masked nin known as Naruto called forth the demonic chakra of Kyuubi. Deep inside themselves they felt their demons shudder of fear. This kid had to be the real deal. He then suddenly cancelled his flow of chakra. "Since we are all the same, there shouldn't be any reason for us to fight. After all, Jinchurikis should look out after each other, as no one else will." Now, what are you here to do, brothers, and how may I help you? Naruto said sagely. Seeing the young nin's logic, Roshi replied saying, we were hired to kill Gato. Our employer said he was last seen in this area. Gato was in this area. However, he was killed earlier today. If you travel about 3 miles north of here, you will come across a large incomplete bridge. At the end of the bridge, that has yet to be finished, is where his body was tossed into the river. If you need to retrieve the body, I suggest you avoid the town and summoning chakra. Explained Naruto. Why should we avoid the town? Asked Han. The legendary Kakashi is in the town on a mission. And it would be best if there was no confrontation. As I'm not supposed to be here. Naruto told them. Naruto then escorted them to the bridge where Gato had been killed by Zabuza. Once there, Han jumped into the river and a moment later resurfaced was Gato's headless body and slung over his right shoulder and his head in Han's left hand. Roshi then wrapped up the body and sealed it. Both of them thanked Naruto and then headed off to turn in a successful kill. Wow, apparently, Gato is doing people better being dead than he was being alive. Naruto thought as he ran back to Tazuna's house. He stopped by his hidden pack and changed back into his pajamas. He then summoned out his cage bunshin and dispelled it. Very quietly Naruto snuck back in and laid down on the futon. Moments later, he was asleep. Over the next week and a half they finished the bridge. The work went by fast, with the help of Naruto's massive clone army. During that time, Sasuke also healed. All too soon, it was time for Team 7 to leave. With tearful goodbyes from Inari and Naruto, the Konoha team headed home. You know, we have still yet to name the bridge, said Tsunami to her father. The aged bridge builder stroked his bearded chin thoughtfully. I think I've got the perfect name for it. Tazuna said. What is it, Grandpa? Asked Inari as he looked up into his grandfather's eyes. How about the Great Naruto Bridge? That's a super good name, Grandpa, replied Inari. Konoha. A couple of days later. Team 7 was tired after 2 days of intense traveling, but they were glad to be home. Kakashi sent them to their respective homes to dump their travel packs, before meeting up at the Hokage Tower to give their report. 15 minutes later, Team 7 stood in the Hokage's office giving their report of the mission to Wave. And then, we returned home, sir. Kakashi said in conclusion as he finished giving a 30-minute report to the third. I see. Well, given the circumstances you will be marked as having completed an A and C ranked mission and will be paid as such. You are dismissed, replied Hiruzen Sarutobi. Team 7 politely bowed and proceeded to make their way out of the office as the Hokage called out. Naruto-kun, could you stay a moment? Wondering what the old man would have to say to him, Naruto hung back and waited for Kakashi to close the door, before saying, What's up, old man? Oh, nothing much. Some paperwork here and there, a few surprise attacks by Konohamaru. Nothing out of the ordinary for me. However, there is a bit of news for you, replied the Hokage. Naruto cocked his head to the side, wondering what Hokage had to say. It seems that while you were away, your landlord passed away. The man had no living relatives, so in his will he put that everything would go to his tenants. As you are the only tenant in the apartment complex, everything goes to you. Here is a list of what you gained from him, the Hokage told him. The third then handed Naruto a folder. Naruto nodded his head and walked out. He wasn't sure what to think about this. He had hated the man that had been his landlord these past 9 years. The man had been old and bitter. Naruto wondered if he was bitter because of who he was or if he just was that way. The man had been mean to everyone. Naruto decided to take a look at the file in the comfort of his apartment. Well, apartment complex, now. Once in his apartment, Naruto opened the folder as he sat down at the table. Let's see what I got here, he thought as he looked at the list. 1 apartment complex. The abandoned lot and condemned buildings across the street form said apartment complex. 969,000 ryu. Naruto was surprised at getting the lot across the street and the money. The lot had been an eyesore of years, even before the attack 13 years ago. He also had no idea the man had a good amount of money saved up. But then again, the landlord had hated spending money. What the hell am I going to do? Thought Naruto as he banged his head on the table. Well, if you'd stop killing the last of your brain cells, insect. I could make a suggestion. Came the disgruntled voice of Kyuubi from within. What's the suggestion? With the money you have gained and the land you now own, why not make it work for you? And how would I do that? You would go to the library and check out books on remodeling, repairing building, building buildings, electric wiring, landscaping, and business management. Then, fix up this hotel and get it looking brand new, give it a good name and reopen it. You'd demolish the buildings across the street and build new ones to open new businesses. I also recommend that you learn the trade of the businesses you plan to open. If you want to get more respect from the village, try being in the business world of things. Explained the demon. That could take a while. Naruto thought back. Yeah, it's a shame you don't have something like Kage Bunshin or Kage Buttai, you idiot. Roared out the fox, causing Naruto to fall out of his chair. Okay, I see your point. No need to yell, Naruto thought as he got up to head out. He summoned a clone for the library and went to get some ramen for himself. Later, when he returned home after a filling lunch of ramen, Naruto flipped through the books that the clone had dropped off. After looking through them for a moment, Naruto created 100 copies of each of the 6 books and then 600 clones. When he handed the last book to the last clone, Naruto himself headed for the Konoha Building Commission's office to get a building permit. While there, he was given the cold shoulder, but a quick flash of some money and he left the office with his permit. On the walk home, Naruto thought on how to remodel the apartment complex and what to name it. Naruto wanted it to be shinobi-friendly. He decided that the first 2 floors would be single bed units. The next 2 floors would be 2 bed units, and the last 2 floors would be 3 bed units. After all, ninjas have families. On the roof, he built a pool for the residents. After drawing up the plans and sending a few clones underhand to see the price listings of other apartment complexes, Naruto went out and ordered enough appliances and furniture for the apartments. When he returned, he had the clones stop reading and started to tear up the old carpet, rip the peeling wallpaper off. They then gathered up the garbage and took it to the dump. Naruto then returned home and dispelled the clones. He fell back onto his futon from the overload of knowledge. Naruto awoke early the next morning and immediately set off for the hardware store. After nearly buying out the entire store, Naruto summoned an army of clones to help him carry the stuff. Upon arriving back at the apartment complex, Naruto and his clones got to work. They tore down walls, put in new support beams, better insulation, new sheetrock, better wiring and pipes, soundproofed each unit, and carefully removed everything from the 8th floor, before he ripped up the roof to build the pool. After they were done, each apartment was painted a nice tan brown, had wooden flooring and new furniture. The hallways were painted the same brown color with a baseline of dark red. The hallways had carpets of a dark red color and on each tan door was a golden number. The outside had been painted a dark red and up at the top was an 8-foot-high metal fence around the roof for the pool. The pool covered about half of the roof space and was in the middle. Seeing that everything had worked out well, Naruto hung the sign, bearing the new name, above the main entrance. It read, Maelstrom Apartments. Knowing the building wouldn't be livable until the smell of the paint left, Naruto headed to the forest for the night. Naruto wanted to get a good night's sleep as he would be rejoining Guy and Lee in the morning. After finding a good place to sleep, Naruto dispelled his clones and fell asleep. Naruto woke up the next morning to feel something fuzzy around him. He opened his eyes as he sat up and looked around him. During the night, a group of 6 foxes had decided to make him home. I guess they think I'm a fox, Naruto thought to himself. Seeing that his movements had disturbed the foxes and they were now looking at him, Naruto batted his hand at them. Shoo, he said as he didn't want them to get hurt. Foxes weren't well liked in Konoha. He then got up and headed to the apartment complex to check on everything. After seeing that everything was alright and sending a clone out to print up some flyers and post them around town, Naruto grabbed the scroll he had found and headed for Training Ground 12 to meet up with Guy and Lee. Guy-sensei, Lee-kun, I'm back, Naruto called out as he caught sight of the 2 green spandex-wearing doe. Ah, Naruto-kun, good to see your flames of youth have returned. How was your mission? Said Guy as he turned to face the blonde-haired genin. It's great to see you again, Naruto-kun. Greeted Lee. Thanks Lee, you too. My mission went well, Guy-sensei. In fact, I even found this. Do you think it will help us? Said Naruto as he handed the scroll to Guy. Guy looked over the scroll for a moment, before his eyes widened in shock. Naruto-kun, do you know what this is? A scroll with an interesting jutsu that I bought really cheap while on my mission? He answered, well, yes, but that's not all. This happens to be the very rare Juryoku seal technique. With this, we can improve a fighter's strength without having to use weights. We would only need to change the seal. It's great that you found this, Naruto-kun, as I was planning on assigning you some weights when you got back. However, you'd have full body weights, so you'd be somewhat bulky. With this, I won't have to. Guy explained. Oh, cool. So, can we do it now? Naruto asked excitedly. Sure. Naruto, take off your shirt and I want both of you to roll up your pants. Guy ordered his students. Naruto took off his shirt and rolled up his pants, as Lee removed his weights and rolled up his pants. Guy then took out a brush and a complex chakra-conducting ink and proceeded to add Juryoku seals to them. On each leg, Lee was sealed with 350 pounds. On Naruto's legs he had 150 on each of them, 100 on each arm, and 200 on his torso. It took several minutes to get used to this new feeling. For Naruto, he had never felt this sort of training was possible. For Lee, it was odd to not be wearing his weights anymore. After 5 minutes of walking around and getting used to the new weight to their bodies, Guy had them start their workout. They did 300 kicks with each leg, 300 punches with each arm, ran 100 times around the village, and finished it all off with B practicing the stances in their respective taijutsu forms. While in their stances, Guy corrected them on what they were doing wrong and helping them to correct it. When they finished, it was mid-morning and before leaving to meet up with Neji and Tenten, Guy turned to Naruto and said, "Good workout this morning, Naruto-kun. Have you by any chance had an opportunity to get a weapon that fits your style?" "No, not yet, Guy-sensei." Naruto replied. "Well, there's a nice weapons store known as the Butcher Shop. I recommend going there," Guy told him before jumping away. After a few more minutes of gasping for breath, Naruto groaned as he realized that Guy hadn't told him where the shop was located. Well, at least it's a nice day to wander around the village. Naruto thought to himself as he headed towards the village. Thankful that he didn't have to meet with Ibiki until tomorrow and then his team the day after that. Naruto summoned a few clones to search around the city, while he had an early lunch. The clones had found the butcher shop while he was eating. It was located in the Oak district of the village. Naruto walked into the shop and was rather impressed by the atmosphere of the place. It was brightly lit with a low ceiling and several of the weapons were on display. "Welcome to the butcher shop, how may I help you?" came a voice to the side. Naruto looked over and saw that a tall, thinly bearded man with a heavy gray apron was sitting behind the counter. "Yes, I'm here for a weapon," replied the blonde. "You're Uzumaki Naruto, part of the Rookie 9, right?" asked the man. Yes sir," Naruto answered, hoping he wasn't about to get thrown out. "My name's Jet. You're the first of the rookies to come and see about a weapon." "Well, any idea which one you want?" Jet asked. "Sorry sir, but no. I did read that weapons should reflect the welder's personality and I was hoping to find such a weapon here," Naruto replied. Jet rubbed his chin and looked at Naruto. "Definitely not a sword or a mace. Do you use a taijutsu style?" "Yes sir, Guy-sensei is teaching it to me." "Is it long or short range?" "Short range." "Is the style meant to be powerful, fast, or a combination of the two?" "A combination of the two." "Last question, do you have a lot of chakra?" "Yes, sir." "Then I think I've got just the weapon for you," Jet replied as he stood up and walked to the back room of the shop. When he returned he was carrying a large, polished, wooden box. Jet placed the box on the counter in front of Naruto and said, "Take a look and tell me what you think." Naruto carefully opened the box and looked inside to see two gleaming steel gauntlets. They looked similar to the ones the Demon Brothers used, except of a better quality. "Very impressive, Jet-san. But, I take it, that there's more to them than what I'm seeing," replied Naruto. "Correct. I call them the Immortals. These gauntlets are the greatest thing I've ever forged. When you summon chakra to certain parts of your arms and hands, the gauntlets will react. When you summon chakra to your fingers, the steel will harden and become sharper than ever before. You'll be able to rip through stone like it's paper. Summon chakra to your hands and the poison will be released onto the claws. Summon chakra to the underside of your arms and the blades come forth." Jet demonstrated each function as he told Naruto about them. Naruto was impressed with the gauntlets. Currently, he was looking at the 3-foot blade that had emerged from a compartment on the underside of the gauntlet. Now, when you summon chakra to the top of your arms, is where things change. The left gauntlet will form a shield and the right gauntlet will shoot out these. Jet continued saying, as he formed the shield and showed Naruto an 1.25-inch long steel stake. How much for the immortals? 3 rolls of 100 feet. Reinforced ninja wire, 2 sets of kunai, and a box of shuriken? Asked Naruto excitedly. Jet grabbed the rest of Naruto order and rang it up. Your total is 250,863 ryu. Naruto happy paid the shocked Smithy, who hadn't expected him to really have that much money for such an expensive weapon. Naruto then left and placed the weapons in the landlord's office of the apartment complex. He took note of how no one had been by to inquire about the place. Sighing to himself, he went out with a few clones to buy a weightlifting set. After buying a barbell set and weight bench with 900 pounds worth of interchangeable weights, Naruto summoned another army of clones and proceeded to demolish the condemned building across the street from the apartments. Once the last of the rubble was at the city dump, Naruto sent his clones to the forest to work on making chakra strings and studying the scroll for Kabikuri. Naruto then began to lift weights to increase the strength of his arms, so he'd be able to weld Kabikuri better. After a few hours of lifting 150 pounds on each arm with the barbells and bench pressing 225 pounds, Naruto ate a light upper and dispelled his clones in the forest. As his mind assembled the knowledge form the clones, he discovered that the foxes had been watching his clones. The next morning, Naruto awoke early and joined Guy and Lee for their morning training. It was nearly mid-morning by the time training was done. Naruto returned to his apartment for a light late breakfast and had a quick shower before changing clothes, putting on his mask and heading for the Anbu headquarters. As he walked down the hall to Ibiki's office, Naruto waved to a few of the Anbu milling about the hallways. Upon arriving at the door to Ibiki's office, Naruto knocked. Enter, came the hard voice of his sensei. Morning, Ibiki-san, Naruto called out as he opened the door. Good morning, to you, doctor. Ibiki replied as he couldn't say Naruto's name. How was your mission, doctor? Ibiki asked, intrigued about how his student's first C-rank mission had gone. Oh, it went well for an A- ranked mission. Even though he didn't show it, Ibiki's eyebrows slightly rose. He hadn't been aware that the mission had been upgraded. Well, doctor, your training has been going very well. I'm impressed with your work ethic for it. So, since we don't have any patients for you to operate on today, I'm going to teach you a jutsu. Ibiki said as he stood up from his desk. Follow me. The two men then walked down a few floors to the torture rooms and stepped inside. What I'm going to be teaching you is what is known as killing intent. It's easy to describe, but hard to master. In order to better understand this, I will perform it on you. Ibiki said rig before hitting Naruto with the technique. There was blood everywhere. So much blood. Death embraced his body completely and then it was gone. Unable to stop himself, Naruto fell down on his hands and knees. What the hell was that? The masked blonde thought to himself, just before he had to push up his mask to throw up. That was killing intent, doctor. Since it will take you a while to master, we've got this for you. Ibiki said as he opened the door and in walked an Anbu with a dog on a leash. Until you can make this dog cower from it, you will not have mastered the technique. Now, time to work. Ibiki said as he and the Anbu left Naruto with the dog. After a few hours, the only reactions from the dog he got was yawning and laying down. Naruto left just before lunch and had his lunch at Ichiraku ramen stand. Afterwards, Naruto and his army of clones began to start work on building some businesses across from the apartment complex. First, he was going to build a grocery store and a bookstore, right in front of the apartments. After all, ninjas got to read and eat, right? Next, was going to be a toy store, a clothes shop, and a furniture store. Across from those stores would be a weapons shop, and 2 empty buildings to become businesses later. On the other side of them would be 3 restaurants. After several hours of working hard, they had finished. Now that the buildings for them were complete, Naruto just simply had to start the businesses. As he walked back into the apartment, Naruto was surprised to see that some people had decided to see about renting out some of the units. A couple had even asked if the 3 bedrooms were available. Naruto wrote down the dates and times for their arrivals. Looks like tomorrow's going to be a good time. Naruto thought to himself as he dispelled his clones and fell asleep. From the time he woke up, Naruto hit the ground running. He did his morning training with Guy and Lee, before sending a clone off to the Anbu headquarters and running off to meet his team. His team completed their mission early and Naruto then left to get some quick weapons training in. After getting a feel for the sword and gauntlets, he summoned an army of 400 clones to practice using them. He then returned to the apartment and wrote a few letters. Several of them were to farmers, a few were for miners of iron in the land of iron, some for fabric sellers, and a couple were for wood suppliers. If he was going to start those business, he'd need the right stuff. Naruto quickly sent the letters off and rushed back to the apartment to take a quick shower before his first interview. After finishing his shower, Naruto put on black pants and a dark gray sweater. He sat behind his desk and waited of a knock at the door. "It's open, please come in," Naruto called out. The door opened slowly to reveal 3 stunningly beautiful and scantily clad women, each with a forehead protector. All of them had green eyes, dark blonde hair, and had dark skin. The shocking things about these women were their model-like looking bodies and the impressive size of their chests. The shortest one had long hair tied into 3 ponytails at the base of her head. She wore typical shinobi shoes, red mini shorts and had a red sports bra on under a white trench coat. She wore her forehead protector around her neck. The middle one had her hair tied up into 6 buns. She wore the same shoes as the other one. She had on a skin-tight navy blue china dress that barely ended past her knees. The dress had a window view, showing off an impressive amount of chocolate flesh. She wore her forehead protector on her right upper arm. The tallest of them was truly a sight to behold. She had long unruly hair going straight down her back. She wore black bell-bottom styled pants. She didn't have a shirt of any kind on, only her forehead protector being used as a thin tube top. "Are you the landlord?" asked the tall woman. "Hi, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, owner and manager of the Maelstrom. I presume the 3 of you are my 4 o'clock? Naruto asked with a slight blush on his face. "Yes, I'm Kathy. This is my younger sister, Kami, and my youngest sister, Sarah." Kathy replied, pointing to the china dress woman as Kami and the shortest one as Sarah. "Me and my sisters are looking for a new apartment, is there room available?" Kathy asked. "Yes, there's plenty of room available. You're the first I've had come by to inquire about the apartments," Naruto replied. Though the Kathy didn't change her facial features, Kami relaxed a little and Sarah smiled softly. "Which unit are you looking to have?" "We're hoping to get a 3-bedroom apartment, Uzumaki-san," replied Kami in a slightly gravely voice. "Would you like to see the 3-bedroom apartment?" Naruto asked them. The 3 sisters nodded their heads. Naruto stood up from his desk and escorted the 3 women down the hall to the stairs and elevators. "Here at the Maelstrom we have it all, for your preferences. We have stairs, elevators, and an empty elevator shaft for ninjas wanting to get to their floor quicker," Naruto explained as he began to walk up the empty shaft. "Each apartment is fully furnished with a queen-sized bed in every bedroom, pull-out sofa, love seat, coffee table, dining table with chairs, microwave, 50-inch flat-screen TVs, stove, oven, dishwasher, shower stalls and tubs in the bathrooms of the apartments." Naruto continued as he walked up the empty shaft and got out at the 5th floor. He walked over to the nearest apartment and opened the door. "Well, feel free to take a look around, ladies." The 3 sisters looked around the apartment for a few minutes and talked amongst themselves, before walking back up front to speak with Naruto. "Naruto-kun, are we allowed to change anything?" asked Sarah. "Oh, yes you can. You can get different furniture, paint it a different color, and select a different type of floor. So far it seems good, but now the big question. How much does all of this cost?" asked Kathy. "Here's a pamphlet with the prices," Naruto said as he handed the folded piece of paper to the tallest of the sisters. The 3 women stared at the prices with wide eyes. They looked up at Naruto and said in perfect unison, "We'll take it." "Perfect, I'll get a contract for you to sign. How soon would the 3 of you like to be moved in and which floor would you like?" asked Naruto. "We'd like an apartment on the 6th floor and to move in as soon as possible," replied Kami. "No problem then," Naruto told her as he summoned 20 clones. "Help them move their stuff in," Naruto told his clones. He then turned back to the sisters and said, "When you get back, I'll have the papers and your room keys ready." The three sisters then left with the clones to gather their things. They returned 25 minutes later with several large boxes and slowly brought them up to the 6th floor. Naruto showed them their new apartment and gave them the paperwork to fill out. 15 minutes later, Naruto had his first residence. Well, things are definitely starting to change around here. Naruto thought to himself as he walked down to his office. Naruto silently sighed to himself. Things in his life were finally going great for him for once. Several more people rented out apartments at the Maelstrom after the Buster sisters. A.N. Kathy, Cammy, and Sarah from Chapter 3. He had even been able to start up the grocery store, named Oishi, and the bookstore, named Foxy Reads. Both were doing well and his shipment of iron had come in a few days ago, so he'd soon be able to start his own weapon shop. He had also started exchanging letters with Roshi and Han. But right now, he was doing the most boring thing ever, he was patrolling. Ibiki told him he needed to put in some patrolling time. He may be an apprentice, but that didn't excuse him from duty. If he was asked who he was, Naruto was supposed to introduce himself as the doctor, Sergeant Major of the Anbu Torture and Interrogation Unit. Even though, technically, he wasn't. Naruto would be eventually, but not yet. The reason he had been sighing was because patrolling was so boring. There wasn't even a cat stuck in a tree. The next time Kakashi-sensei uses that excuse, I'm going to go ballistic. Naruto thought to himself. At least things weren't too bad. He had been paired up with Big Bear and Little Bear, since Middle Bear was out sick. They were two female ANBUs with bear masks and were well known in the Anbu for being one of the best three-man teams. However, the two of them were completely different from one another. Where Little Bear was quiet and deadly accurate, Big Bear was loud and destructive. Currently, the three of them were on a roof as Big Bear argued with Little Bear about which type of killing blow was better. I'm telling you Little, an explosive tag to the base of the neck is the best. It ensures that the target is dead, provides a distraction, and it's fun as hell. Big Bear replied with a laugh. Big, please. Little started before a chorus of loud screaming down below grabbed their attention. The three members looked over the edge to see Konohamaru, Udon, and Moegi being chased by an enraged Sakura and Ino. I got this Big, Little. The brats probably just said something to piss them off. Naruto replied as he grabbed his sword and sheathed it. Alright, doctor, let us know if you need backup. Big Bear told him just as he was jumping off the roof and heading in the direction he had seen the Konohamaru ninja squad run off to. Konohamaru, Udon, and Moegi were running for their lives. The incident had all started when they had overheard a pink-haired girl talking to a blonde-haired girl about their Ni-chan, Naruto. The pink girl had called him an idiot and was happy that he wasn't wasting her time by asking her out anymore. The blonde had replied saying that Naruto had no tastes, as he had been trying to get the pink-haired girl's attention instead of her own, not that he would have stood a chance. This made the three of them mad, so the three academy students jumped out of the tree they had been hiding in and in rather loud voices declared that their Naruto Ni-chan wouldn't be caught dead with a billboard brow girl or an anorexic blonde bitch. These statements pissed off the two Kunoichi, which led to them chasing down the three academy students. Konohamaru quickly turned a sharp corner and slammed into something large and hard. He fell back onto the ground as a voice above him said, "That hurt." Udon, Moegi, Sakura, and Ino, who were both staring at these foreign shinobi. Standing before them was a guy in a black jumpsuit with purple kabuki face paint and a mummy-wrapped package on his back. As well as a tall, tanned girl in a lavender battle kimono with dirty blonde hair tied back into four short ponytails and had a large fan on her back. The insignia on their forehead protectors indicated that they were from Suna. Slightly behind the two Suna nins were three more foreign shinobi. One was a guy with light blonde hair with dark skin and was carrying long katana at his side. The other two were both female. One is dark-skinned as the guy with long red hair and also carrying a long katana at her side. The last female was tall with short blonde hair. She was wearing a short black battle kimono and had a cold impassive look on her face. The insignia on their forehead protectors indicated that they were from Kumo. Sakura and Ino both enviously noted that the three foreign Kunoichi were more endowed than they were, but didn't look much older than them. Judging by the stances of the ninjas, they had just interrupted what looked to be the starting of a brawl. "Come here, Pipsqueak," growled the boy in the black jumpsuit as he picked up Konohamaru by the scruff of his shirt.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.